everyone please be upstanding for the Speaker of the London Borough of Hackney?
Good evening. I would like to welcome you all to this evening's council meeting and to those members of the public who are watching the live stream. I would ask that you set your digital devices to silent mode to avoid interrupting the proceedings. A reminder that this is an in-person meeting, and for those councillors who are accessing the meeting remotely, you're not counted as being present for the purposes of the Local Government Act 1972, and you may not vote on any item under consideration. Members, if you have not already signed in indicating your attendance this evening, please do so before you leave. Similarly, please ensure that you signed out if you have to leave before the conclusion of the meeting. I would like to remind members that 2023-24 Budget and Council Tax Report at Agenda Item 8 is covered by S.106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992. This provides that if a member is in arrears in their council tax by 2 or more months, they are obliged to disclose this fact to the meeting and not vote on the matter. Failure to comply is a criminal offence punishable by a fine. Finally, can I please remind all councillors and officers to use their microphones when addressing the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Adejare, Councillor Billington, Councillor Leader-Scott, Councillor Lufkin, Councillor Lynch, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Ogunkanli, Councillor Ross, Councillor Selman, and Councillor Young. The following councillors will be joining remotely: Councillor Gordon, Councillor Joseph, Councillor Premru, Councillor Sadiq, Councillor Samatar, and Troughton. I have received apologies for lateness from Councillor Hayhurst and Councillor Potter. Are there any other apologies? Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Crowfoot.
Councillor Crawford, thank you. Any other apologies? No, thank you. Agenda item 2, Speaker's announcements. Since the last full council meeting, I've had the opportunity to take part in many fantastic initiatives and events, including citizenship ceremonies, Holocaust Street Memorial, Holocaust Memorial Day service in the council chamber, Chinese New Year with Hackney's East and Southeast Asian community, Grenada Independence Day celebration, a visit to Captain Girls Academy, where I had a chance to speak at an assembly and then have a discussion with politics students, Hackney Youth Award, Speaker's Charity Dinner. Events to come: a community Turkish dinner where we'll be fundraising for the Turkey and Syria earthquake. The date for this event is May the 3rd. Please put it down in your diary. Further details will be released closer to the dinner. Lastly, we have arranged a reception for organizations who have supported and are still supporting earthquake victims. I want to end my announcement by taking a moment to send my thoughts and prayers to the people of Turkey and Syria who have been impacted by the devastating earthquakes. I invite all members to stand, if you're able to, and join me in a minute's silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. It is noted that all members of the council who live in the borough will have an interest in respect of agenda item 8, the 2023-24 budget and council tax report, as council taxpayers. However, a collective dispensation has been granted by the monitoring officer in accordance with the Constitution under Section 33(2)A, Localism Act 2011. On the basis that without it, the number of persons who will be prohibited from participating in the meeting would be so great a proportion as to impede the transaction of the business under that item. Other than as noted for item 8, are there any other declarations of interest that members wish to make in any respect of any item on the agenda? Your declaration should indicate what item on the agenda it relates to and the nature of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Yeah, Councillor.
I'm just like to declare I'm a member of the union Unison, and that relates to the motions later on.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? Yep. Oh. Okay. Yep. Thank you. So, Councillor.
I'm also a member of Unison.
Okay. All right. Noted. Thank you so much. Yeah? Okay. Noted. Agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree that the minutes of the meeting of the council held on 25th January 2023 as a true and accurate record of proceedings? Thank you very much. Please stand up.
You have by the, you
Stand
have,
up. Councillor, please stand up addressing the speaker. Thank you so much.
we have by the attendance, you have the Councillor Goldberg was there, and then you have him also down as giving his apologies for not being there. But he actually wasn't here, so if you could have that.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 5, questions from members of public. Members are to note that questions from members of the public appear in the supplementary agenda. Yeah, okay. Question 5.1, from Emmanuel Akin to the Mayoral Advisor for Housing Needs and Homelessness. I understand Mr. Akin is joining us remotely. You see that? Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Akin. Please ask your question.
Hello, thank you, Mrs. Speaker. Yes, my question is, bear with me. So over the years, I've seen the social mobility of the demographic in Hackney change and impacted for many reasons, one being housing and homelessness. So my question to the council is, what are the plans do the council have to prevent and support young people from becoming homeless? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akin. Councillor Etty, would you please respond? You have no more than 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Emmanuel Akin, for asking this question on behalf of the young people. You're almost representing the young people in Hackney. 1 minute. Let me quickly let you know what we are doing from the council when it comes to homelessness and for the youth. Let me bring to your attention, first of all, the impact of the current housing crisis. The increased housing costs and the population growth has had a pressure on existing housing stock that we have, affecting vulnerable groups such as younger people. But what we are doing is we are committed, irrespective of the housing crisis, including we'll be building 1,000 new council homes, which is our ambitious plan for social rent. And in addition, to remind you that Hackney Labour government, we have it in our manifesto to create more awareness of homelessness in secondary schools and colleges in Hackney. So that tells you that we're very serious about it, and we're taking it really seriously and considering the young people within the borough. There can be no doubt about the scale of the housing crisis across London. The number of homeless applications increased by 45% from 2017, 2018 to 2021, 2022, with approximately 2/3 of the 3,500 approaches in 2021, 2022 coming from single households. The council delivers support through the Greenhouse Centre, and this is a service dedicated to supporting single homeless residents. And we plan to expand this service in 2024, so we'll be able to bring even more advice, having everything in one location. We're not stopping at that. We partner with the Single Homeless Project to deliver housing support to 300 single residents each year through personal housing plans, mediation, and prevention work. We are looking to extend this work as well, providing valued support for the young people. And let me also let you know that we have 2 dedicated benefit and housing needs officers working specifically with young people. Anytime a young person approaches the council or is at the risk of homelessness, we have dedicated benefit and housing support officer that attends to them. And one thing is clear, in the homelessness code of guidance and the joint statutory guidance on 16 and 17-year-olds who are homeless, it sets out that both children's services and housing authorities' duties of this group of young people, which means there is more intervention support. To support and prevent homelessness, there is a need for joint working, which is a key part of reducing the risk of homelessness. So thereby, we're not doing things on our own, we work in conjunction with children's services and also and taking this forward. And thereby, they continue to provide educational support within schools to reduce the possibility that the young people will become homeless. We prevent youth homelessness through a number of projects, including the Single Homeless Accommodation Program, support to access private rental scheme tenancy. We also expand the advice offered to caregivers. Finally, we must not ignore that the government policy exacerbates these challenges faced by Hackney residents. We are committed, like I said initially, to build 1,000 homes, but particularly for our young single people whose housing support is capped at a level based on accommodation with shared facilities. The council will continue to lobby the government to provide adequate support through housing benefits and universal credit. And what I would like to suggest to you, Emmanuel, is to tell your colleagues and your friends all over the borough to let them know the impact of what the Conservative government, the effect it's having on our young people, and the need for every young person in Hackney to vote for Labour Party at every election so that we can definitely continue to support more young people into housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etty. Mr. Akin, do you have any supplementary question? Any supplementary question must arise directly out of the original question or the reply from Councillor Etty and must not be a speech or a statement.
Thank you. No, I do not have no supplementary questions, Speaker, but just to commend the great work of the council in attacking this issue in regards to homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akin, for your question today. Agenda item 6. Okay. Okay. Carry on. Agenda item 6. Question from members of the council.
I'm in the chamber, I want to know exactly what's happened. What's your explanation, please?
Members, just to update you all, there were no other questions that were submitted within the time frame.
Check the records report. Well, surely you know, wouldn't you? All right, fine, I'll give him my name, not a problem. I just wanted to ask the mayor directly, especially regarding the HHRC legal fees. What's happening on the front of that? Because, you know, it is taxpayers' cash, as you rightly said. Giving the products that are beneficial to
Make it, and you can table it at the next meeting. Yeah, I will. Yeah. I'm not hiding behind anything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not here to pop any respect to you or anything like that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Please could you ensure you submit your question within the framework. I would like to call the meeting to an order, please. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members, for patience. Agenda item 6. Question from members of the
Madam Speaker,
council.
can I have point of order? Can we
Only
know
if it's
what's
a point of
going-
order, councillor.
Point of order. Can I know what's happened? Why is he turned up? Why is he?
As I mentioned earlier, he did not. No one else submitted any question within the time frame, so he did not have a question. He just turned up. Thank you very much, councillors. Agenda item 6. Questions from the member of the council. The maximum time allocated for this item is 30 minutes, and I'll be strictly adhering to this. If you're responding to a question, a reminder that you have no more than 5 minutes, and the traffic light system is here to guide you as to when you have 1 minute remaining and when your time is up. However, please be succinct so that we can get through as many questions as possible. After 30 minutes, any questions not answered will be receiving a written response. A reminder that supplementary questions must arise directly out of the original question or the reply and must not be a speech or a statement. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 10.4, questions from members of the council have been alternated between the majority and minority groups. Question 1 is from Councillor Binny Lubbock to Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Member for Delivery, Inclusive Economy and Regeneration. Councillor Binny Lubbock, please ask your question.
As set out, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binny Lubbock. Deputy Mayor Nicholson, would you please respond?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I do kind of often wonder what it is about the Green Party and their questions. There's always this sort of kind of call for this, call for that, all of which is absolutely appropriate and proper in this chamber. That's exactly what questions are for. But then there's always this subtext about claiming credit for the leadership of an initiative, the delivery of an initiative, always that undercurrent, and it airbrushes out the reality. This question does not fail to deliver on exactly that proposition. What I will do is just point Councillor Binny Lubbock to the manifesto. The manifesto that this administration went to the polls in May of last year with, and nearly 60% of the votes cast supported what's in here. And if I may just point out, Madam Speaker, Councillor Binny Lubbock demands that there is a commitment to demolition as a last resort. We did commit. It's in the manifesto, Madam Speaker. He says council homes should be replaced. Yes, we say. We did commit. It's in the manifesto. Delivering new homes. Yes, it's in the manifesto. And finally, building new homes to Hackney's net zero targets. Yes, Madam Speaker, it's in the manifesto. I suggest it's a good read, it's worth having a look, and perhaps the Green Party may just sort of take 1 or 2 lessons from this manifesto and work with us. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Councillor Binny Lovelock, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Yeah, so it's a bit difficult to square that answer with the reported net loss of 431 Hackney Council homes in the last 10 years. But I would like to ask what the impact of the increased cost of building plans has been on the council plans to bring more council homes online through renovation, retrofit and regeneration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binny Lovelock. Deputy Mayor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the numbers, a net loss of 431 council homes. Madam Speaker, what has conveniently been left out of that statement is the fact that the figures then go on to say that Hackney is building, that new social rent homes are being built in Hackney at more than double the rate of existing homes being demolished. Madam Speaker, look, I rest my case. There's the response. The other element to all of this, which should not be missed, is that before Christmas, this council committed to the first phase of the delivery of 1,000 new council homes. The decision was taken by this administration, by this council, to start that delivery. And incidentally, Madam Speaker, the first phase of those homes, guess what? It's not about demolition. It's about building on brownfield land, underused land, land not in current use, around our borough, and building the homes that people need. And Madam Speaker, just to finish on this, if I may just sort of say that actually where the real mess is, it's not about Hackney not building anything. It's actually about the government's right to buy. Councillor Billy Lubbock talks about 431 council homes. Actually, the figure of 1,353 homes lost to the council is actually far, far more critical, because however many homes we build to replace the lost 431, I think all would agree 1,353 homes that have been lost to the social rent sector and to the council, that is pretty serious, and we need to sort out right to buy, and perhaps we can work together to deliver that message through to government and get a change in policy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Next question is from Councillor Patrick to Cabinet Member for Finance, Insourcing and Customer Service. Councillor Patrick, please ask your question. Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Chapman, would you please respond?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Patrick, for your question. The cost of living crisis is hitting Hackney residents hard. And the council is doing everything within our powers to support residents who have been affected by this. Madam Speaker, as you all know, the government took away the uplift in universal credit at the end of their perceived end of the COVID crisis, and that decision alone cost the total residents of Hackney something like £35 million. So while we can't fill every hole in the government's broken benefit system, we can do everything we can to help residents in the borough. Our data shows that Hackney communities miss out on about 28 million in unclaimed benefits every year. To tackle this, the council has worked with our NHS partners to create a dedicated team to help residents to maximise their incomes. This is the Hackney Money Hub. In the first 4 months of the team, it has supported 308 people with benefits uptake, delivering a minimum of 248,000 increased annual incomes, an average of about £805 per person per year. Hackney Money Hub also makes it easier for residents in crisis to access one-off grants by creating a single point of access. So the team has dispersed £230,000 in one-off grants. Hackney Money Hub also makes it easier for residents in crisis to access one-off grants by creating a single point of access. And so far, the team has distributed 230,000 there as well. Finally, we are ensuring that the support from the Money Hub doesn't just go to those with the ability to apply for council services. by proactively contacting those we believe are underclaiming, doing extensive community outreach and running training sessions for staff and volunteers across Hackney. We're building skills and confidence in helping residents to apply for benefits. Madam Speaker, later on in our agenda tonight, we'll be asking the Council to agree a budget and a council tax increase for 22/3/24. We are very much aware that this increase comes at a time when the overall cost of living pressures, fuel, food and housing costs are hitting hard. We will support some of our hardest hit residents by making a one-off payment of up to £50 to all council tax reduction scheme claimants. This is double the support plan by the government, and we will cover the impact of the increase in both councils and the GA elements of the council tax for the majority of council support scheme recipients. We're also topping up the council tax hardship scheme to double its usual level and adding at least £250,000 to the other poverty reduction initiatives. Much of this support will be directed through the Money Hub. In only 4 months, the Money Hub has already made a big difference to the lives of hundreds of residents in Hackney. And we regard it as important that it will continue its vital work in supporting our residents in these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Patrick, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. I work in the Money Hub and think it does brilliant work. I just wonder how we can expand. You talked about using community groups. I just wonder how the council can also get through to people who perhaps aren't in touch with community groups or the NHS, or who perhaps people are stuck in their own homes. I think the work's great, but we do need to expand it further.
Councillor Patrick, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. I think there's a variety of responses to that question. I think, first of all, we should fully acknowledge that the roles that the community sector plays in Hackney and the Money Hub and all other parts of council services collective benefits have very close connections with them, as they, are really a powerful resource in connection with the community. One of the aspects of the Money Hub, it's going for 4 months now, which is quite a short time. It works across the council and it's made up of largely of secondaries from other departments, but they're building on their knowledge and using the data we have to see, where in terms of profiles, there are gaps, and they're following through on some of the things where people are clearly receiving one benefit and entitled to other types of benefits, to make sure that that people are claiming what they're due. I fully accept that this service has been running for 4 months. Obviously, equivalents have been going beforehand, but we are really, really pleased with the results that we've had so in the 4 months, and we hope to build on those to reach a much wider group in the community. But your question is very apposite, and it's very important that we follow through to get deep as well as wide.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. The next question is from Councillor Garbett to Cabinet Member for Finance, Insourcing and Customer Service. Councillor Garbett, please ask your question.
Thank you. In reading Labour's manifesto, I picked up that you're wanting to establish co-ops. This is on page 10 of the manifesto. You specifically say you want to set up co-ops to challenge market failures. And I just wondered how many you're planning to set up by 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Garbett. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and Councillor Garbuck. I'm going to borrow Deputy Mayor Nicholson's manifesto to point out and just thank you for raising get this issue, which is like one of the central points and important points in our manifesto that we're really proud of and really delivering, to the benefit of both the co-ops and the people in Hackney. Anyway, thank you for highlighting the manifesto pledge of this administration to develop co-ops and to challenge market failures. That work is developing fast, and the council has already committed 67,000 and has been awarded a further 70,000 from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund to kickstart this work. Hackney signed up to the Cooperative Council Innovation Network last year, which enables the council to work with others in this field and enables us to access training and resources to enhance our knowledge of setting up and operating co-ops. We have also expressed an interest in leading a policy lab as part of this network. This will develop thinking about the role of local government. Who faces barriers to jobs? What sectors need workers? How might co-ops help address the labour market crisis? Hackney will also soon launch its own independent affordable childcare commission, and we expect this to look at cooperative models as possible solutions. The council insourcing policy has been revised alongside the sustainable procurement strategy. This will enable us to consider setting up of cooperatives as a model for delivering service unsuitable for insourcing in line with our manifesto commitment. The insourcing policy details this approach and the steps that should be taken by council departments to bring existing outsourced service contracts in-house. We've also undertaken background work to support the cross-council effort needed to deliver the manifesto commitment. This includes a review of local authority best practices across the country on where it's beneficial for co-ops to be formed and the approaches taken to establishment, working with our partner Islington Council to learn from their practical experience of establishing Cooperate Islington, and continue to work with our excellent relationships with Hackney Cooperative Developments, with whom we have a strong existing partnership on their experience in establishing co-ops. Working with a London ownership hub to promote more co-ops and democratic business in London on a regional level. We're working with Islington Council and Cooperate Islington on a joint bid to the GLA to secure funding to support procurement teams in establishing the pipeline of relevant contracts for social businesses. And lastly, our adult social care department are on their own market assessments to undertake understand the barriers suppliers face when completing for local authority contracts and whether they could be social businesses receiving information about cooperative business model to encourage transition. So again, I'm really grateful to Councillor Garbutt for raising this really important part of our manifesto. You will note that despite difficult financial situations, we have identified resources to help us develop this work. And as we develop our revised sustainable procurement and insourcing strategy, we expect to see co-ops play a far more important part yet in our future work.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Garbutt, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. That was really comprehensive, and it's good to hear the commitment. I just wondered if you had an estimate for how many that will be set up in the next couple of years.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. Councillor Chapman.
I don't, but that shouldn't be seen as a lack of any commitment on our part to maximise all those sort of initiatives that I've just set out to make sure that we involve co-ops wherever possible and appropriate. Yeah. And it's worth mentioning, actually, we have, and it's often forgotten that we have a relationship with Greenwich Leisure, who run our leisure services, who so this works not just on the micro level that I think you tend to focus on, but we have one really, really big contract with a co-op already.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. The next question is from Councillor Gilbert Smith to the Mayor. Councillor Smith, please ask your question.
As set out, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Mayor Glanville, would you please respond?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Smith. I did just want to point out that I think this is another council meeting where we have no questions from the majority opposition group in this session. They often talk about democracy, but they never exercise their rights in this chamber. So thank you, Mr. Smith, Councillor Smith, for the question. What has impressed me most is about how you've worked together as a ward team on this. Yourself, Councillor Joanna Thomas and Councillor Coban have been stalwart frontline councillors, always on the side of local residents, using your e-newsletters to keep local residents informed and working in partnership across the portfolios that obviously your colleagues have in making sure that you're active and lead that response from your different roles and perspectives. Madam Speaker, as members are aware, the partial building collapse on Stoke Newington High Street has been an ongoing and complex incident. Many residents were displaced and a number of businesses impacted. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, people were left with uncertainty of when they'd be able to return home and to their business premises, or even the condition of those premises when they did get to return. This caused an immense amount of financial and emotional distress to all of those concerned. And then there was the ongoing transport disruption that impacted a wider area of the borough, interrupting buses, interrupting transport networks, and also putting additional pressure on local roads. I'd like to pay a huge tribute to the cross-council effort led by the emergency planning team, but involving departments from transport to housing needs to communication, to ensure that we were able to mobilise in response to what was an incident within a private property to make that building safe, safeguarding life and limb, and making sure that people were represented and supported. Today we were on site with Councillor Coburn and Councillor Smith, and we are now in a position where all but 4 shops and 6 flats have returned to their premises. That is slightly ahead of the latest published schedule, and the A10 reopened yesterday. We've now handed the site back to the landlord and their managing agent, and we're waiting Edison's, the freeholder's managing agent, to carry out their own due diligence before letting those remaining tenants back into the property, although we have been told they have been able to get some access to items. Clearly, though, this is going to have a lasting financial and emotional impact on your constituents. That is something that we will continue to work to support those residents and businesses around. We, I think, have been really visible leaders out in the community, holding those public meetings, making sure we wrote to Edison's to ensure that they did what they should be doing. But I have to say this is an area of market failure. I think there's a prioritised building control regime, lots of complexity around freeholders, managing agents, lease holders, private tenants, and all too often it was the council that was left having to rehouse people when it should have been others. We were stepping in and making sure people had a roof over their head. I'm sure there will be lessons learned for the council, for all of the other organisations involved, and there may well be implications for local and national policy. I know working with you three as ward councillors and as mayor, we'll continue to make those representations and ensure that we deliver for residents. And I'm just so pleased that the road is reopened today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Councillor Smith, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. The next question is from Councillor Billy Lubbock, the Cabinet Member for Environment and Transport. Councillor Billy Lubbock, please ask your question.
As set out, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn, would you please respond?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me first start also by taking a moment to join you to pay my respects to the thousands of Turkish, Kurdish and Syrian communities in Hackney who've obviously been massively impacted by the devastating earthquake in Turkey. Turning to the question, we are obviously aware of the problems described by badly parked bikes, and this has been raised by many colleagues across the chamber, namely sort of Councillor Patrick, Councillor Tabitha. Many have sort of advocated for making sure that our streets and our pavements are sort of removed from clutters, and we are in constant contact with Linebike to reiterate Hackney's policy that these may only be sort of used for designated parking bays. Compliance is not where we want it to be, and we are working with Line to improve this. However, what we have seen is that there have been a number of different measures that have been brought in since it has been introduced to help better manage parking. And you have to remember, in the context of 99,981 trips being taken in Hackney, there is a lot of Linebike trips that are being used, which is really positive in one hand, but also can be problematic in other hands. It's also not just a Hackney problem. Being in touch with counterparts and colleagues in other boroughs, we're also seeing that this docking spike can provide sort of challenging for some of our streets. One of the things that we are doing, and what Lime is doing, in terms of finding the system, is making sure that if they do park outside of those parking bays that we've obviously worked with them on, they will receive a fine up to £20. And then finally, a ban of users who have offended more than 6 times. So if they've paid more than 6 times, that means that they will no longer be able to use Linebike. Our policy puts the responsibility on Lime to resource the patrolling and removal of parked Linebikes outside designated bays, and they're increasing on-street team patrols to remove bikes parked irresponsibly. The council has also reserved powers to remove bikes that are causing an obstruction, which it can use at any stage if required, and which was adopted by Cabinet. This includes the ability to issue advisory notes and fixed penalty notices to the operator of the bike, and prosecute them if the FPN is not paid and the power to remove bikes causing an obstruction immediately and charge a collection fee of £80. Lime has a service improvement commitment to ensure that their users can only park at designated bays, preventing lock-in elsewhere. They will launch their new mandatory parking zone technology in Hackney by June 2023. Users will only be able to lock their bike or end their bike if they're in a designated parking area. We're expanding the number of parking bays for cycle hires from 68 to 128 by the end of May 2023, and plan to increase this number to 550 by 2026. These are also allocated and communicated to users of Lime Bike on the app. Users attempting to end their journey outside of the designated parking bay in Hackney will be warned in an in-app of Hackney's parking requirements and will be charged a fee should they abandon their bike outside of a dedicated parking bay, in line with the existing charges. Whilst we recognise the potential for these bikes to reduce car trips, pedestrians remain the priority, and we have a strict approach to managing their impact. It is still a new service, and compliance has increased, to be fair to Lime Bike, since the launch. But as I said right at the start, with 99,981 trips this January, Lime is clearly providing an important service, continue to help contribute to traffic reduction by providing an alternative car journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. Councillor Billy Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. I'd like to thank Councillor Coburn for his response, but I would just wonder if I can actually get an answer to the question that's written. How many fines have been issued? Do we know that? And does Hackney get any of that money? Also, how many removals take place? I've reported so many Lime bikes that are right in the middle of the pavement, and that I can't necessarily move out of the way, and I don't hear back for 2 days. So I'm just wondering if there's any point in reporting them. Thank you.
Councillor Coburn, please.
Yeah, so thank you, Councillor, for your follow-up question. So in terms of the reporting system, obviously we have heard about some of those challenges that you've also mentioned. Lots of colleagues have raised it, obviously raised it across Hackney, and that is something that we've fed back to them. And as I said, we do hold the right to reserve to also fine Lime as a company based on a contractual agreement, but we have sort of held back on that approach up until we make sure that we give them the right time to be able to implement those changes. And in terms of how the money is used, it's used to put more resources back into sort of supporting patrols and obviously removing bikes that are obstructing payments. Obviously, the number of fines that have been issued are sort of evolving on a sort of daily basis, hourly basis, so it's not something I can give you a live up-to-date figure now. But of course, if you do write to me, I will send you a most latest up-to-date figure.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. The next question is from Councillor Ifra Samatar, the Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Member for Education, Young People and Children's Social Care. Councillor Samatar has joined us virtually. Councillor Samatar, please ask your question.
I set up, please, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bramble, would you please respond?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. We have debated here in this very town hall, actually, as to whether the implementation of the Election Act for people to have voter ID is indeed necessary. And I suppose, at best, it begins to highlight an exaggerated problem that exists within the system, but at worst, seeks to disenfranchise many of the groups that you have referenced in your question. And that is why the Mayor and I wrote to the Secretaries of State to highlight those issues. But nevertheless, the law is the law, and we must confine to the law. So we have to do everything within our power to ensure that we minimise the risk of this very, very harmful legislation. So you may know by now, members, that from March 2023 and October 23 in the general elections, if there is one, yes, and one would hope there is, you have to have voter ID now. So we will see that play out outside of London. I must stress, Madam Speaker, that you do not need voter ID for postal votes. So this is a really good time for elected members to ensure they remind our residents that actually, if you have a postal vote, you will not need ID. So one of the things that, while it is the Electoral Commission's responsibility to let members know, our residents know about those changes. Because this is so important to us, of course we will do everything that we can do to alert people to those changes. So one of the things that should happen is that Hackney residents should get a notification of being able to vote. You should receive a booklet that looks a bit like this. If you haven't got that today, that will be coming, and it gives a breadth of information of what is needed. We will be doing a range of activities, whether it's at the footer that you may have seen in at the bottom of my email, and all councillors can use that. So every time a resident gets in contact with us, councillor, Madam Speaker, they will see that changes are needed. We're working with comms to do a series of engagement events. I will be joining the team, the election team, and thank you to Dawn and Bruce for all they're doing on this, to talk to young people about the changes and the importance of votes. That extension to speak to young people and education settings will be extended to all councillors of all parties, Madam Speaker, because what's important is your democratic right for every single resident. So I think it's important to mention that as well. These are available for us to use in our static surgeries, our roving surgeries, and if there are any events or occasions that you think would be necessary, please notify the monitoring officer and they will provide support for you to provide these leaflets at these events. It's really, really important that we do all we can to raise awareness of this. What I would say is that, again, I have to stress, you don't need ID to vote. Every party across all political persuasions, Madam Speaker, has raised concerns of this, including the chairman of the Local Government Association, who is a Tory. I too, in my capacity as one of the deputy chairs, has raised this at the LGA board, and as I said, the mayor and I have written. It's really, really disappointing that a government, again, would use legislation to disembowel local residents' right to vote. But we will ensure here in Hackney that we do everything that we can to raise an awareness, because we believe in the right for our residents to access and demonstrate their right to their right to vote. So, Madam Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Councillor Samata, do you have a supplementary question?
No, Madam Speaker, but I just want to say that I did receive my copy of that this morning, and it's very detailed, and would like to thank Deputy Mayor Bramble for your support with this.
Thank you, Councillor Samata, for the question. I would like to thank members who have submitted questions. Those members whose questions were unable to be answered due to insufficient time will receive a written response. Moving on to agenda item 7, the elected mayor's statement. Mayor Granville, would you like to make your statement to the council? You have no more than 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you for everyone joining us tonight. I'd like to start by congratulating Councillor Selman and her husband, Peter, for their new baby, Jamie, who was born at the weekend. The second time we've had such congratulations, and I can see Councillor Sadek as the new dad on the screen. Central to everything we do, Madam Speaker, at the council are our communities and residents. And it is heartbreaking to know that so many people in our communities are going through at this incredibly difficult time. Only this afternoon, we're reminded about the impact of violence in our community, and I'm sure our thoughts are with the victim of the attack at Hackney Central and his family, as well as those who responded, including Overground staff, British Transport Police, and London Air Ambulance. So quickly to this horrible incident, and we must really acknowledge the trauma of those that it leaves behind. Incidents like this, Madam Speaker, are rare in Hackney, and that is due to the dedicated hard work of so many council teams and the police, and that is led by Councillor Fajana Thomas. But that does not take away from the importance of this incident, and I hope that people will work together to ensure that it's quickly investigated and that we continue that work to tackle crime and reduce violence and support our communities. I echo, Madam Speaker, what you were saying at the start of the meeting about the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and I'll come back to that in a second. But I'd just like to thank you for the work that you were also doing last week with Deputy Speaker Sizer to mark the anniversary of the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine. The impacts of this war have been and continue to be devastating. And I'm proud that Hackney has welcomed over 3,000 refugees and that we continue to stand with Ukraine. Having made part of that team, the work of the Council on Homes for Ukraine is a team made up of officers from across the Council. They really are the very best of us, committed and responding to some of the most challenging situations and trauma that any of us would have to face. Alongside the community, schools, hosts, and so many more that have donated to support the work of people supporting Ukrainian refugees here, as well as Ukrainians impacted in the conflict at home. Hackney remains steadfastly committed to supporting those who've been forced out of their homes because of the conflict in Ukraine, as well as other conflicts across the world. We continue to stand against Russian aggression and for a peaceful end to this conflict that sees Ukraine's internationally recognised borders restored so that Ukrainians can return home. So a huge thank you to those that were on the Town Hall steps, including Councillor Bramble and Councillor Williams, as well as the Ukrainians that joined us for that really poignant minute's silence last Friday. We continue to invest in our budget as well, Madam Speaker, around those with no recourse to public funds, around help and support, as well as supporting the Windrush generation. I look forward to a future council meeting when we formally become a borough of sanctuary. Tonight, as you have said and Councillor Coburn has said, we also stand with Hackney's Turkish, Kurdish and Syrian communities following the catastrophic earthquake in Turkey and Syria. I'd like to thank you for that minute's silence. We know that whole villages, places that many older generations of Hackney residents once called home, have been destroyed. We know many of our residents, colleagues in this chamber, staff, businesses, voluntary community groups are still anxious for family and friends or are dealing with immense grief and loss. I think all of us can say that we're devastated about the impacts of this disaster, and we stand with all of those in our communities and beyond impacted. Like always, though, Hackney rallies to the cause. The community organisations from that community and beyond responded to this crisis. We know it's going to have a deep and lasting impact on the region, so I just plea that everyone doesn't just stand with these organisations and these communities today and tomorrow, but for months and years ahead as we work to rebuild those communities in Turkey and Syria. I'd like to thank all those who donated and responded, including, as I said, Madam Speaker, the Cabinet, the Faith Forum and councillors. And it was a pleasure to visit organisations across the borough, as well as take part in vigils at the Hackney Mosque and in Trafalgar Square. Earlier this week, Councillor Williams and I signed an open letter calling for the government to urgently allow visa extension applications for Turkish and Syrian nationals in the UK to be granted on compassionate grounds for those that have visas that are set to expire, are unable to go home, and to expedite those decisions for those waiting to enter the UK and set up a programme of temporary visas for those impacted by the disaster. We do that with other borough colleagues and MPs. We've also signed the open petition that was debated in the House earlier this week. That was a really clear ask from our communities when we've been out there and visited, when we had the community impact assessment event at HCGS. We'll continue to listen to our communities about what they need on the ground here and how we can add our political weight to a better response. Madam Speaker, I also want to express our heartbreak at the tragic circumstances which cut short the life of the bright and talented young woman, Brianna Gay. I'm deeply grateful for Hackney CBS, Councillor Samatar and all those who attended and arranged the vigil last week, honouring Brianna's life and memory. I could not be there, but at the previous weekend, alongside Councillor Williams, I joined the moving vigil in Soho, standing in solidarity not just with our trans and non-binary community, but all those who stand up against hatred. It's a responsibility to all of us working at the council that we, as an institution, create a place of belonging for our staff and residents. It's why we hosted Para Pride the weekend before last, and it is why I'm very pleased to see a solidarity motion supporting the trans community at full council this evening, and it has my full and unwavering support. I'd like to thank again Councillor Williams, Garbett and Potter for their work on bringing it forward on a cross-party basis. Madam Speaker, we know that community and voluntary sector organisations are there for us in tough times as well as in celebration. We're lucky to have such a vibrant sector in Hackney. We'll continue to invest in it as we are seeing later in the budget. We also, though, celebrate our communities, and we've, since we last met in this chamber, had the Hackney Mayor's Music Awards and Hackney Music Service Gala, Boroughs United and Alter Ego. These events are supported by the council and are fantastic occasions for Hackney's extremely talented young people to express themselves on the Hackney Empire stage and be celebrated for their achievements. Taking the Mayor's Music Awards as an example, it was funded and set up by my predecessor, Mayor Pike, to establish and support inspiring young musicians to develop their musical skills and to recognise the quality of music education offered in our schools. An example of the council putting funding into our communities, and I look forward to sharing more examples of that in my budget speech shortly. We've also celebrated National Apprenticeship Week, which is a great chance to celebrate our awards-winning Hackney apprenticeship journey, highlighting an incredible team and those apprentices that have joined the council, transforming and making our organisation more diverse and representative of the borough which we serve. 300 apprentices have now been through that programme and it continues to grow. I'm also looking forward to celebrating during the course of this year through the micro grants and Windrush 75, the coronation events and the big lunch, all that is best about our borough on our streets and with our communities. Next week is Purim, an incredible festival for our Jewish communities. I really do look forward to joining people in Stamford Hill in that celebration. Madam Speaker, though, as well as celebrating our communities, Hackney Labour and I continue to do the hard work to deliver for our residents and our borough at a local and national level. On damp and mould, Hackney's political leadership has pushed for a dedicated damp and mould reporting line, creating an inspection priority for all reports of damp and mould to ensure that they are inspected within 5 working days of reporting. And I know Councillor Mackenzie is not here, but he would want it to be mentioned. We now have a 24-hour priority response to all reports of leaks, as well in our buildings, as well as an online non-urgent repairs reporting service restored. On a national level, Madam Speaker, my Cabinet and Labour councillors have been on picket lines for striking teachers, nurses and ambulance workers. We've also attended demonstrations in central London and lobbying the government around the right to strike, and I look forward to supporting a motion later this evening. We also celebrated, though, since we last met in this chamber, Art Unions Week and the vital work that unions do. I will continue to urge people to join and support our trade unions, and again, sadly, our teachers are on strike, not just for themselves, pay and conditions, but for our education service that serve our young people. We have, though, since we last met, Madam Speaker, had the amazing news from our Labour Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, that he's launching a £130 million scheme to give every state's primary school pupil free school meals in the academic space. Truly, this shows what happens when you have Labour in power, and it will be transformative for those in our borough and beyond that live in food poverty. It's simply a national outrage that this is not being funded by the government. You have a unity across sectors, trade unions, think tanks and organisations, and I look forward to the day that we should have a Labour government that invests in free school meals for all. We, though, won't stop with the programme that the Mayor of London has launched, because we know there's something more fundamentally wrong with our meals services in our schools. Too much of it is outsourced, too much of it is low quality, and too much of it is expensive. So our Free School Meals Task Force that we launched last year is around creating a better system locally for healthier meals produced by local residents employed by our schools, bringing down the cost and ensuring that when we do deliver free school meals, that it will be much, much better, lower food waste, and delivered for all of our residents. I can see, Madam Speaker, I have my time has drawn to a close, but we won't stop delivering for our residents, and I look forward to outlining more of that in my budget speech shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Does someone from the Conservative group wish to respond? You have no more than 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The response will be more or less today on what the Mayor has mentioned. First of all, about the terrible news of earthquake in Turkey and Syria. And from this side, we would also like to basically, send out, it's very little we can do. It's very unfortunate how many people have passed away there. And it's terrible what's happened. And we just echo basically everything the Mayor has said on that. And it's also, like the Mayor said, 1 year since Russia invaded Ukraine. And I'm glad to see the Ukraine residents who have managed to move to Hackney and all that we've done for those residents. Obviously, the times lately have been very different to in the past, where we have a lot of terrible tragedies going on in the world, and it's really, frightening when you see it. I'll move on to congratulate Councillor Salmon for the trial. Like, I couldn't hear clearly if there's anybody else who I have to congratulate besides Councillor Salmon, but I wanted to congratulate Councillor Salmon for the trial. I think it was last year she also had a trial, or 2 years ago, so I wanted to congratulate her for that. And it's very interesting you mentioned about the mayor giving the 130 million for the children's meals in schools and whatever it is, but I'm just wondering if that also applies to private schools, or if that's just the ones which are funded. I then want to move on to, we're doing today a budget. It was very interesting. This is, I think, my 17th year that we're doing as a council doing the budget. I got on Sunday the Hackney one. I can't keep up with the names. I keep on changing the names. And this was the first time where, before the budget was actually done, it says in the paper basically what we're going to be paying council tax next year. Now, I don't know if this is, it could be one of the two things. Either this is not supposed to be like that, because I can't, surely council is supposed to vote on a budget. How are we sending out the budget of next year when it's not been finalized? This could be a legal issue. I don't know. This is very strange to me. Or else, we also get treated like dummies, that basically what happens in the cabinet, that's it. So it's basically saying in the paper, don't worry, there is a council, but it doesn't matter. It's all done by the mayor, and that's it. But it is not the way that a budget should be done. Because basically what's happening here tonight is, before anything, you've already decided, because you've sent out those papers to say what the budget is. I am a little bit worried on that. While talking about that, I'm also a little bit worried on the mayor from London. He done a consultation in Newlands, and obviously now it turns out that certain things there went wrong. So all in all, it's very interesting what I see and what's happening. Now, another very interesting thing happens is, obviously the oppositions get to speak and respond to the mayor, but then the mayor has the last, which obviously you're the majority, which you have that, but it's, I wouldn't say unfair, but it's kind of like, we don't get to say, like, when you ask a question, you get a supplement, but here you just don't get to say a second a bite in the question. So I know that this is probably how it works everywhere, but it's a bit interesting for me. I'm going to finish off by this, and that's basically from our side what I have to say. I'll talk more about the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Steinberger. Councillor Garbutt, do you wish to respond? You have no more than 5 minutes.
Sorry, just lost my screen. I'd like to add our words of solidarity and to echo the mayor's comments around recent tragedies we've experienced, and our thoughts are with people in Syria and Turkey and their friends and family, and also just to recognise the strength and kindness shown by Hackney residents and communities, an organisation in Hackney which has been absolutely staggering. Locally, we've seen hatred directed at our communities, as well as across the country. These events are deeply saddening. Now more than ever, we are required to be bold and active in our solidarity of communities under threat. We'd also like to thank Hackney CVS and Councillor Samatar for organising such a powerful and moving vigil last week for Brianna Gay, held on the Town Hall steps, which Councillor Benny Lubbock and I attended. The murder of a trans young woman is absolutely horrific and shocking, and has deeply affected many people. I'm proud to be bringing forward a motion jointly with Councillor Potter this evening, which restates and reaffirms the Council's commitment to support trans and non-binary communities. We note the response earlier regarding the work the council officers are doing to prepare for the introduction of voter ID. Our Fair Votes motion that we passed here last year included our outrage at the introduction of voter ID and the potential to exclude people from the ballot box. This is sadly an attack on our democracy from the government, including anti-union and anti-protest laws, and democratic institutions should inform and engage and empower people, not bypass or restrict them. We're also concerned about mature trees on council land that continue to be marked for felling without proper community engagement. Residents have been shocked to see mature trees on Chatsworth Road felled and one on Bayston Road in Stoke Newington, which was almost lost forever until a petition started by residents on the street gains hundreds of signatures in 24 hours. But despite a stay of execution, it's still at risk. We think it's essential that the council properly engage with residents and share their spaces with these beloved trees. Again, on consultation, we just wanted to raise awareness of the proposal for City Airport to end the ban on weekend flights. Currently, this is the only period of respite that residents living near the airport under the flight paths, which includes homes in Hackney, get. So we want to make sure that residents are aware of Newham Council's consultation so that they can give their views before the middle of March. So I implore all councillors to let their residents know about this. Today we debate the administration's budget. We recognise the difficult financial context that the budget is being proposed in, but we hope that the amendments are seen as constructive and look forward to presenting these later in the meeting. We hear and recognise the backlash against funding being used for the coronation of Charles Windsor. We are all for bringing communities together, but to celebrate a man inheriting a hat worth billions studded with stolen jewels has not landed well with many residents and community groups at a time of cost of living crisis and stretched council budgets. And just to add lastly, we do wish everyone celebrating a very happy Pro-Olympics. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. Mayor Glanville would like to exercise your right to reply. You have no more than 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, Madam Speaker. Turning to Councillor Steinberger, and obviously it was, I welcome both contributions, obviously in terms of our solidarity, and I think it shows us at our very best in this chamber when we're representing our communities and showing solidarity in what is truly dark times. And I think that's one of the reasons as well that Deputy Mayor Bramble and I wrote to schools, and one of the onward things that we know all of the communities that I've been talking about this evening need is mental health support and trauma support, and that's something that we're really committed to working with 5 London, but also our health and wellbeing network partners to ensure that that support in a culturally competent way is available for all of our communities. Turning to Love Hackney, you'll know that obviously Hackney Today was a newspaper and it was available fortnightly, so you're able to report the news in a way that a monthly magazine isn't able to do. My understanding from reading it and signing off some of the copy, including my column, was we've heavily caveated that councillors would have before them this budget and what that meant in the magazine. It will still, whatever happens in the chamber this evening, the booklet and the council tax bills and all of the wraparound information that tells citizens where their money is being spent, that only goes to print and only goes through people's door after the democratic decisions are taken in this chamber, and that is absolutely right and proper. In terms of the kind of back and forth in the chamber, I highlight again, there was 30 minutes before I even stand up to speak, where you get a chance to hold us all to account, Councillor Steinberger, and you as a party are still not using that slot available to you. Just think of the hours that have gone past in this chamber where you haven't used that democratic opportunity on behalf of your residents. Some might call it a disgrace, but I leave that for the public to decide. On ULEZ and in your budget, and I don't want to slip us over, Madam Speaker, into the next debate, but it's really clear where the Conservative Party's priorities lie. It is with killing children in London. They oppose the ULEZ. They don't even listen to campaigners like Rosamond on behalf of her daughter. It is a disgrace. taking legal action against the mayor is a disgrace. We need to clean up our air, we need to reduce vehicle dominance, and we need to have a far more sustainable way of getting around our capital. On ID, I think we absolutely agree, as Deputy Mayor Bramble said, around the impact on ID. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud, and I think the discrepancies and the gerrymandering, even within the voter ID setup, where freedom passes for older Londoners do count, zip card and passes for younger Londoners don't. We've seen an appalling take up of the temporary ID that councils can issue, and I still think a vast majority of our residents, despite all of our work, will only find out that they have an obstacle to voting when they reach the polling station, and that is obviously our big collective fear. I think on mature trees, Deputy Mayor Nicholson, Councillors Coburn and Woodley have heard you. If we can work with you and local ward councillors to improve that process, we absolutely will. And I know that we have a very dedicated trees team in the council. Turning to City Airport, I think the Labour Deputy Mayor of Newham, Councillor Assa, and his speech earlier this week just shows the passion and commitment that Newham have to opposing this expansion. Councillor Burke, when he was the lead member, wrote in 2019 as part of a response to consultation at City Airport, opposing on behalf of the council that broader expansion, and I'm sure we'll join with colleagues in Newham and beyond in making sure that those voices are heard and echo what you have said. In terms of the coronation, we have a £500,000 cultural programme that hopefully this chamber will be agreeing later this evening. It is, I think, around £10,000 of that £500,000 that is going to support street parties around the coronation. I think, given it is the head of state, it is probably not a once-in-a-lifetime moment, but we won't have many in our lifetimes. It is absolutely right, in a borough as diverse as ours, to use the coronation to bring together our communities. What you will see, as you saw though with the Jubilee, and indeed when we were marking the death of the late Queen, that we tell that radical story of Hackney as well. So our libraries and our archives are going to look at how they create a balanced programme of activities that really draws on that non-conformist Republican movement that we're very proud of here in Hackney, ensuring that that story is told at that time of national moment, and we have the balance I think you were seeking. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Campbell. We are now moving on to agenda item 8, 2023-24 Budget and Council Tax Report. As indicated at the start of the meeting, members are reminded that 2023-24 budget and council tax report is covered by S.106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992. Members need to be present in the room for the duration of the debate if they wish to vote on this item. Members who enter the chamber after the debate has begun will not be permitted to vote. Mayor Glanville, do you wish to introduce the report? You have no more than 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to propose my 7th budget in this chamber. Clearly a little hoard, and it must be there's something about an administration that coughs together delivers municipal socialism together. I have all the energy and passion that I had when I proposed my first budget in 2017, where I freely admit that I'm bolder, greyer, older, and sometimes wiser. It's never stopped, though, in all of those 7 years, being an honour and privilege to do this job. As Mayor of Hackney, I'm proud every day of what this council administration has achieved for residents in the borough over the past financial year. And I want to express my sincere thanks to all the council officers, community and voluntary sector organisations and residents who have made this possible. I'd also like to thank my colleagues in Hackney Labour for their leadership, tenacity and commitment to Hackney and its people. The dedication too of officers and politicians alike delivering for our residents and the borough despite a multitude of challenges is inspiring. But while that sense of pride continues, Madam Speaker, I'm never complacent, never satisfied, and full of a sense of forward ambition for Hackney, which we'll see in tonight's budget. Just so, reflecting on the past year for a moment, during that time when the cost of living crisis has deepened, we've supported 20,000 low-income families every half term and school holidays to access food and created that free school meal task force we mentioned earlier. We invest £40,000 in warm spaces across the borough, in addition to using our libraries. We've helped, as Councillor Chapman has said, 2,300 residents access nearly £400,000 worth of national benefits and local funds through the Money Hub. During a time when we're still faced with the impact of the pandemic and a criminal cyber attack, we've also funded nearly 1,200 cultural activities, 40,000 diverse participants and audiences. We have continued our multi-award winning apprenticeship programme with an additional 23 local people employed this year, bringing that total to 300. And we supported the Kickstart programme and 170 placements, 18 to 24-year-olds, 3 times as many in that apprenticeship programme as when I was elected in 2016. We carried out a £2 million refurbishment to create the cutting-edge Pavilion School, bringing the total number of new additional SEND school places to 84 since 2020, with more to come. We invested in our parks and streets and estates, seeing us retain us all 28 green flags and winning numerous awards for our work, from big ticket projects like Britannia to the waste and recycling team for their Zero Waste Hackney programme. We've been pioneering on anti-racism, national leaders on sustainability and active transport, and there can be no other council in the country that has won a Turner Prize and now sees 5 projects delivered by this Labour Council nominated for REBA Awards. Springfield Park, St Leonard's Court, Britannia, Frampton Park and Shoreditch Park Academy, and we wish them all well. And during a time when the government has continued to cut its funding to councils, we've seen that 41% reduction in our core funding since 2010. But unlike the party opposite, we've never cut our ambition for this borough. We created a £300,000 community energy fund for community organisations to launch energy efficiency schemes in our communities. We've completed nearly 50 new council homes with construction beginning on 47, and planning permission granted for another 52. We invested an additional £1 million in tackling the repairs backlog, as well as treating damp and mould. These achievements all in the face of all of the international and local national challenges we talked about earlier. And while those challenges remain, and pressures on household incomes increase, and the council's finances tighten, we've got inflation reaching levels higher than most residents have ever endured in their lifetime. It has a real impact on living standards, and it is driving more people in our borough into poverty. As inflation soars, with government support woefully inadequate, pressure on our families and demand for council services increase. And while we cannot fill the financial gaps left in every family's pocket during this crisis, this budget will continue, as we will hear, to protect the most vulnerable, build our borough's resilience, and provide the crisis support where we can afford to do so. We're seeing also more people from our families, children and adults need support from social care teams. There was bigger pressures, as Councillor Essie said, on housing and welfare support, largely due to broken national systems and policies that drive people into homelessness and destitution. Not to forget that this has also happened when the council is less resilient, with higher energy costs, the cost of unfunded but welcome increases in officers' pay and other costs. So sadly, Madam Speaker, tonight we are, alongside other councils, suggesting to this chamber we have to increase council tax this year by 4.99%. That will allow us to continue to invest in vital services, and is made up of 2% for adult social care and 2.99% for council tax. I'm not, again, glib in what I'm about to say, but this increase equates to less than £1 extra a week. It means our bills will remain cheaper than most other London boroughs, and our services continue to represent excellent and outstanding value for money. It is, though, something we do with great reluctance, and we know it will have an impact on residents, especially those on the edge of poverty. But it's something built into the funding assumptions of the government. We are, though, going to expand and improve our council tax reduction scheme. So in the immediate, we have the 85% scheme that we know. That supports 26,000 low-income families and pensioners and care leavers to pay their council tax. We're also going to make an additional £50 payment next year, and we're setting out how we will take that contribution down to 10% in the following year. As you can see from Deputy Mayor Bramble's wonderful video on the Town Hall steps, we're also extending to foster carers an exemption around paying council tax in recognition of their invaluable contribution that they make to the lives of our most vulnerable children. Madam Speaker, after a decade of austerity and cuts to our budget, Labour councils like Hackney have protected our frontline services, invested in our workforce, and protected the most vulnerable residents from austerity. But we also were elected on an ambitious manifesto. So this budget invests in those manifesto priorities, working together for a better Hackney, which is fairer, safer, greener, healthier, and works for every child. It recommits us to tackling poverty. It embeds Labour values in the council's priorities. So £3.7 million in the coming financial year to reduce poverty, £300,000 for that food poverty task force that I mentioned earlier. Working tirelessly with Councillor Marima, we've unlocked £400,000 in the base budget for our private rented sector team, the largest increase in a generation, a 25% increase in capacity. It will also ensure that we can deliver landlord licensing expansion. We will also increase our investment on homelessness and continue the award-winning work to refurbish temporary accommodation led by Councillor Etty. We will continue to protect adult social care, £85.4 million, £58.8 million on children's social care, and that crucial nearly £13 million spent on youth and early help services for families, including keeping open all 4 of our youth hubs and 6 essential playgrounds, as well as £22 million being invested in early help, our children's centres, and broader education system. As a Labour and cooperative mayor, Madam Speaker, we're also, as we've heard hinted at earlier, going to be championing direct investment and increasing the borough's capacity to grow more cooperative organisations and also take Hackney Light and Power to its next stage. This is the first truly co-op budget that this council has ever seen, and I'm incredibly proud to be a Labour and cooperative mayor serving with so many Labour and cooperative councillors. We're also going to be delivering on net zero commitments, Hackney's Green New Deal, based on social justice, £61 million over the next 3 years to achieve that net zero target, and also expanding provision for our young people. Just turning very briefly, Madam Speaker, to capital, because much of what I've been talking about has been revenue. We have a capital programme of over £300 million in the coming year, as well as the support of the Levelling Up bid. It will see us being able to invest in our council homes, £51 million, £100 million just this year going on new council homes, building towards that 1,000 council homes mentioned by Deputy Mayor Nicholson, £14 million in our state-maintained schools, as well as £17 million being spent on parks, gardens, open spaces and leisure centres. I've mentioned the £61 million on a greener Hackney, but unpacking that, 15 million on net zero emissions, 8 million on decarbonisation of our building stock, 3 million on street scene projects, as well as millions on cycle hangers and EV infrastructure. We're also, Madam Speaker, going to make our public toilets free. And I say that when the only Green council in the country is contemplating shutting loos and libraries. You might say, Madam Speaker, that the Greens in Brighton truly have gone down the pan. I look forward, the punchline's there, I look forward to hearing from colleagues what they think about the Greens' own budget amendments shortly, but I'm very happy to stand on our record against any Green council in this country and show that this borough is safe in Labour hands. I finish by thanking Councillor Chapman for all of his hard work, the Cabinet, Council colleagues, scrutiny and audit, especially Ian as Group Director of Finance and Corporate Resources, but also the entire management team at the Council for their work on this budget. It's an ambitious, Labour and cooperative, values-driven budget in the most challenging of times that protects universal services, builds resilience, invests in our priorities, Hackney's future, creates more opportunities, supports the most vulnerable, and I'm very pleased to commend it to this chamber tonight. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. I understand that we have amendments to the proposed budget being put forward by the Green and Conservative groups. In accordance with the budget and policy framework rules, the amendments will be taken in the order they were received. So the Greens will present the amendments first, followed by the Conservatives. May I ask Councillor Garbutt and Councillor Benny-Lubbock to propose and second the amendment respectively, as circulated in writing prior to the meeting? Thank you. Councillor Benny-Lubbock, please indicate whether you wish to speak immediately after Councillor Garbutt has explained the purpose of the amendment, or whether you wish to reserve your speech until a later period in the debate.
Reserve my speech, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garbutt, would you please explain the purpose of the amendments? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So the Mayor has mentioned the continued political choices made by the current government, which have put our residents in dire situations and continue to deplete the resources of the council. Even though I recognise the consequences of not setting a balanced budget, at what point do councils continue to set balanced budgets at the risk of being complicit in neglecting the desperate needs and health and well-being of residents? We support a continued loud and strong voice from councils, the local government independent association independent group, and association and opposition MPs, so that the government is held accountable for the decisions it's forcing councils to make. As the current government seems unable to do so, the next government must address wealth inequality, end austerity, and increase public sector spending. The Green Party proposes a number of ways of doing this to achieve this, including closing offshore and corporation tax loopholes, a wealth tax, a land value tax, abolishing the monarchy, scrapping Trident, and costly nuclear power that won't come online in time to address the energy crisis. But it's heartening to see that the council, even while facing adverse financial situation, continues to prioritise support for the most vulnerable in our society through its poverty reduction framework. I applaud the council's determination to seek innovative ways to continue to spend on vital services which create long-term well-being in our borough, including, not limiting to, children and adults' health and well-being, our homes and SEND. We'd like to thank council officers for continuing to show compassion, resilience and dedication to the work through these difficult times. And a huge thank you to the finance and officers across the council who've responded to all our questions and helped develop this proposal. We hope the administration sees these as constructive proposals and they are able to take them on. We had hoped the administration would have listened to the concerns raised by library staff and taken on Unison's recommendations to embrace the strategy before making reductions to staffing during a cost of living crisis. We feel that going ahead with a cut to library staff is a risky strategy, which is at odds with the Mayor's commitment in this document to commit to and invest in early intervention and prevention. We'll continue to support staff and residents in this difficult time. So our amendments speak to the crises we're currently facing, to the cost of living crisis, the ongoing pandemic impacts and recovery, particularly for young people and disabled people, and the climate crisis. Our first proposal is an opportunity to increase film and TV production charges to recognise the desirability of Hackney as a filming location, to use that money to fund creative arts grants for young people to train and have opportunities in the film industry so they can directly benefit from that use in the borough. We've heard that the film production company, we can sell this to film production companies as an investment in their own industry. And as we've heard from the chief executive of Film London, there's a massive skill shortage. Our next amendment is to review visitor parking vouchers. We want to increase discounts for blue badge holders to 70% and decrease blanket discounts for over 60s to 30%. In terms of the average and median wealth in terms of this age group, it doesn't make sense for this age group to receive the large discounts. And it's a lot in line with the strategy to reduce or decarbonise travel. To increase blue badge reduction recognises that most people need to have vehicles and visitors to address their care needs and for socialising. Older people who have needs and need to access discounted car parking can do this through applying for a blue badge, even if they don't drive, and access these proposed increased discounts. For our next amendment, we would prefer to see in general a committee system, as it would be fairer and more democratic. But whilst we have a mayor and cabinet system, we think one deputy mayor and one mayoral advisor is plenty. With the savings made, we propose funding additional workers, one full-time and part-time in the Money Hub, which we've heard a lot about this evening. We've praised the work of those incredible workers. You know, they've already got 5 outreach posts and there's huge demand. So we want to put more posts into that team, which would cut wait times, but specifically also help with disability benefits, particularly around appeals, which we know that roughly 40% of appeals are overturned. So we want to create more capacity to support disabled people. We also want to permanently fund a biodiversity officer. There's been too much uncertainty around this role. It's been promised and it hasn't materialised. So we think it's essential to address the climate and ecological emergency and respond to the calls of local climate groups. And finally, we want to commission a feasibility study into the potential for workplace parking levy on employers and employer parking within the borough to leverage more funding. There are further areas of green administration would also undertake, and we would look to review. There's progress that has started in these areas, but things we'd like to continue on, continuing to look at parking charging, particularly around electric vehicles, cycle hangers and emission-based charging, pushing for the landlord, the borough-wide landlord licensing scheme, and making community hall hire cheaper for community groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpet. Do members wish to debate the amendment? Yes. Okay, so who would like to speak first? Yep. Okay, Councillor Kennedy as well. Yeah. Yeah, Councillor Chapman, please. No?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Kennedy. Okay, brilliant. Councillor Kennedy, would you like to speak? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Chapman is now speaker of the amendment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll just briefly deal with this, I think. Well, I think the first thing I want to do is really thank the Green Party for their amendment. It's yet another ringing endorsement of our manifesto and the policies that we have. And really, it's really good to talk about our challenges, but also our achievements and successes. So thanks very much for that. Can I just say in summary, the total changes in this are, I think, 248,000, which I make to be just slightly less than 0.1% of the whole budget. So it really, there isn't any substantial change there. And I'm reading from this that, in all those other areas, you're fully supporting our budget and you're fully behind our manifesto. Thanks very much for that. As for the amendments, my colleagues will, I think, come back on some of the more detailed points. But despite your ringing support, I don't feel that we'll be able to recommend to our colleagues that we vote for your changes tonight, because there are some issues that just need much more of the full development. And as I said earlier, for instance, about the money hub, I mean, it's a team that's brought together with secondments from other teams, and it works in a very organic way, which is its strength. And although we will fully support it, and of course, if the moment comes when it needs to be additional staff put into it, we'll clearly look at that in the light of all the other balance, the way it works. But
thank you.
I think we can't, it's not the right decision at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman.
So I'll stop there then.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's up. No, thank you so much, Councillor Chapman. There's 1 minute allocated to each individual. Councillor Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to point out a couple of omissions in the amendment from the Green Party. We're out to tender at the moment for the advertising boards on our pavements, which we modestly estimate will make us £50,000 a year. There's no amendment showing where you would raise that money yet. You constantly tell us that you don't want us to be doing that. Second, and even more puzzling, we're restructuring our library staff at the moment. We're taking out 19 full-time equivalent employees. That is saving us £250,000. You've signed a petition asking us to delay that work for a year. You stood on the steps of the town hall with the petitioners. You stood outside Hackney Central Library with the petitioners, asking that we don't do that work. Where's your amendment showing where the £250,000 is coming from? It seems to me you've jumped on so many bandwagons in the course of the last year that you've forgotten the ones that you actually have to fund during the course of the council annual budget statement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Woodley, please.
Thank you. I think where we will align will be our concerns around SEND, although I'm disappointed I don't see anything on SEND within this budget, specifically in terms of children with special educational needs and your amendments. But I think we would agree that we have been working within the most incredibly challenging period. I realise that this week is my 3rd year in Cabinet. We've gone through crisis after crisis, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's cost of living, and we know that our most vulnerable children and families are the ones that pay the price. This Tory government has absolutely failed to fund SEND. Councils across the country are in eye-watering levels of deficit. It is an impossible situation. And yet, nonetheless, as the Mayor pointed out, we delivered between 20 and 22 84 new SEND places. We are now in the process of delivering another 72 places across 2 of our primary schools and side by side where we're creating places there. So we're also looking at our independent schools and the needs for every child in our borough. And we have just this week in decision making looked at another 93 places across secondary schools, primary schools, and our independent settings again. So we are already halfway through to meeting our commitment for 300 additional places in SEND. So I did want to acknowledge your concern for SEND, to let you know I share it, but we have to look at the incredibly challenging environment that we're in. I also want to reassure you, you don't need to add an amendment here for a biodiversity officer. You are right, we have long promised it. You can't do these things overnight, but it is firmly embedded within our Parks and Green Spaces strategy that we develop our work in biodiversity. We have a plan to bring in a new volunteer officer and a new biodiversity officer in Parks and Green Spaces. It's already happening, but I'm glad you'll support that when that comes through and join us in our nature recovery work across the borough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Etty, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much for the amendment. But I would have loved to see, because we all understand what is happening when we are talking about temporary accommodation. It continues to increase, and the main reason is because there is no other reason other than the fact that the terrible policy from the Conservative government, and the Councillor Geba to suggest that we reduce the role of mayoral advisor. I would have sincerely expected you to say something on how we can reduce the amount of money we're spending on temporary accommodation, how we can improve the service to our residents, because it clearly shows we are taking a very good strategic leadership when it comes to our rules, and there is no doubt about that, and it is obvious when it comes to various policies that we are leading on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etty. Deputy Mayor Bramble, please. You have up to 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There is an interest for a cultural arts programme, so I thought that I would highlight that we spend 4,000k with Hackney Empire and 90,000k with Hoxton Hall, Madam Speaker. Also want to mention the money that we invest with Immediate Theatre, which is 65,000k, and not to leave out the mouth that roars, because we've all had a fantastic time. I know the Mayor has also been interviewed by them quite fiercely, another 65k. This is a area of the council that I work with Councillor Kennedy, and we work quite closely together. We also invest with organisations like Rising Tide, not to mention the voluntary sector. It may be the first time you hear me say this tonight, Madam Speaker, but not the last. We are doing this while we have lost 60p in every pound from central government.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Councillor Colburn, you have up to 1 minute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an interesting amendment proposed by both opposition. You've got one side who denies climate change and doesn't want to take any action on tackling air quality problem that we have in London, and on the other side you've got a party that just wants to talk about the environment but doesn't actually have any real plan. I draw attention to one of the amendments around securing more cycle spaces. I think I just want to use that opportunity, as both Councillor Nicholson, Deputy Mayor Nicholson, and Councillor Chapman already said, to remind the Chamber that actually we've got the most ambitious plan for cycling in London. We actually announced 675 new cycle hangars, an additional 4,000 bike parking spaces for residents in Hackney. But also, I'm really confused about some of the amendments around the emissions-based charging model, because on one side you say you support the emissions-based charging model, you talk about the cost of living crisis, you talk about electric vehicle charging point, but actually if you inflate the electric vehicle charging point cars to 6 times more in an emissions-based charging model, what that will do is it will also inflate prices of the other banned cars as well, which would mean that in a cost of living crisis, what you're actually doing is pushing every other ban 6 times more than what the current proposed charges are, which is totally unacceptable in the crisis. So I think what we brought is a balanced budget, recognising the difficulty that residents face, but also showing our ambition around tackling the climate crisis.
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. Our last speaker is Councillor Werma.
Thank you. I won't even take a minute, but just to say, the suggestions around bringing forward the licensing scheme, as the Mayor has said today, we have announced that investment and we're really proud of that. It was, again, a commitment in the manifesto. We accepted all of the recommendations from the London Renters Union, and where we were very honest with them, unlike the group behind me, who it does feel increasingly they don't listen and simply ask questions for the clicks on social media. We were very honest with the London Renters Union, and they understand that we need to work through the realities of the finances that we face and the timescales that we work to here in this council, because we do want to involve the whole public. We want to make sure that we have a solution that works for tenants and landlords are part of that conversation. And so, as I've said for the last 2 times that this question was asked, when the paper comes to full council and we talk about the timetable for the licensing scheme, I fully expect full support for it.
Thank you, Councillor Werma. Councillor Benny Lubbock, this is your opportunity to speak to the amendments. You have no more than 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the robust debate we're having here. Just to reiterate, obviously we are the minority opposition, so we only have limited resources, and holding the administration to account on specific areas where others are failing to do so is very much part of our role. Just to speak to some of the things that have been raised in this debate. On libraries, we think it's totally unfair to bring this up when it's basically a done deal, seems to be, and we thought it was not fair to use it as a political football in this arena. As reference to the biodiversity officer that was mentioned, this has been promised for too long, and as we've seen with citizen assemblies, sometimes we see things that are promised and they don't actually come through as delivery. So, you know, we've looked at that manifesto, it was in there, and we haven't seen any citizen assemblies, and we haven't seen the biodiversity officer. So this is one of the areas where we thought we should make a very strong point and find the money to deliver it. On the mayoral roles, you know, if they're particularly important and as for housing and for people's residents, people's lived experience, then they should be cabinet roles. They should have that official designation, and they should have an ability to vote in cabinet. If we believe that cabinet is the correct system, the Green Party does not. We think we should have a committee system, which would be much more fair and involve more of our councillor colleagues here in this room. Councillor Coban mentioned about emissions charging based models. What we're talking about there is looking into it in a lot more detail, looking at the charging that is on estates is very, very low, and emission-based charging on estates is something that needs to be looked at as well. But you were saying that if we raise the electrical vehicle costs to what we would like, which is the amount of space they take up. You know, if they take up the same space as 6 bicycles, then they should cost the same as 6 bicycles. Well, we can still encourage electric vehicles to be purchased and used if we bring the price of bicycles right down the parking for bicycles. So we want to look at that in tandem so that it doesn't create the problem that you highlighted. In terms of the landlord licensing, we just need to see it brought forward much, much faster. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councillor Benny Lubbock. Councillor Garbutt, do you wish to exercise the right of reply? You have no more than 2 minutes.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we now move to a recorded vote on the amendments proposed by the Green Group? There will now be a roll call, and each of your names will be called in alphabetical order. When your name is called, please state how you wish to vote on the proposed amendments. Please simply state for, against, or abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Please, can I ask that you switch on your mics for the live recording?
Can I just check? I don't actually think I got a right to reply. It says the proposer has no right to reply, just to clarify. Oh, okay. I didn't think I had one.
Okay. Please kindly switch on your mics and respond for, against, or abstain. Councillor Adams. Please, can you turn on the mic and light, please?
Against.
Councillor Adebayo.
Against.
Councillor Baffle.
Against.
Councillor Benny Lubbock.
For.
Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Against.
Councillor Chapman,
Against.
Councillor Coburn,
Against.
Councillor Conway,
Against.
Councillor Desmond,
Against.
Councillor Etty,
Against.
Councillor Fajana Thomas,
Against.
Madam Speaker,
Against.
Councillor Garbett,
Or.
Mayor Glanville,
Against.
Councillor Hayhurst,
Against.
Councillor Kennedy,
Against.
Councillor Lisser, Councillor Maxwell,
Against.
Councillor Moema,
Against.
Councillor Nicholson,
Against.
Councillor Narcross,
Against.
Councillor Ungermuren,
Against.
Councillor Palace,
Against.
Councillor Patrick, Councillor Potter,
Against.
Councillor Race,
Against.
Councillor Rathbone,
Against.
Councillor Sizer,
Against.
Councillor Smith,
Against.
Councillor Steinberger, Councillor Susaronge,
Against.
Councillor Turbot Deloff,
Against.
Councillor Walker,
Against.
Councillor Webb,
Against.
Councillor Williams,
Against.
Councillor Woodley,
Against.
Councillor Rout.
Against.
Thank you. Apologies, we received your, oh, I apologise. Councillor Troughton. Thank you.
Thank you. The amendments proposed by the Greens have not been carried. We have a second amendment to the proposed budget being put forward by the Conservative group. May I ask Councillor Steinberg and Councillor Liza to propose and second the amendment respectively, as circulated in writing prior to the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not very clear. Do you want me now to propose my budget or just to?
Let's just that you'll be proposing it. You have an opportunity to speak later on. I will.
Okay, yes, so I would like to propose.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Liza, you second? You second the amendment? Yeah, thank you so much. Councillor Liza, please indicate whether you wish to speak immediately after Councillor Steinberger has moved and explained the purpose of the amendment, or whether you wish to reserve your speech until a later period in the debate. Yeah. Later on, reserve the right. Thank you. Councillor Steinberger, would you please explain the purpose of your amendments? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I would like to thank Ian Williams and Jackie for the time, the effort, and for even guessing some of what we're going to propose. So I would like to just give you a little bit of a thank you for that, and also obviously the junior officers who obviously I did mention talk to, so hand them over thank you from our side of the. Now I know it's obviously going to be my job to get all the slaps in and everything. However, we have to stick to our guns, and it would obviously be much healthier if we could put through solid budget rather than just amendments. But being opposition, we are limited to amendments, so we just do amendments. I proposed many times, and I think it would make it slightly easier now, in a way, that when we have a budget, there should be like a working steering group where all the parties sit down together and try and see if there's any common ground. There's a lot of things which we've had in the past in our budget, which in fact later on materialized, funny enough. If you go through all the years, you'll see there's quite a few things which we put forward to have cuts, and it did happen. Now, there is a saying, a sack with a hole. Unfortunately, if we keep on, there's one thing here which my colleague has probably told me today 10 times, it's the Tories' fault. 13 years ago, or whenever it was, when you had a Labour government, the last note that Gordon Brown left in his cabinet was actually, he's got not a penny in the kitty. It's probably also the Tories' fault. So whatever happens, it's always the Conservatives' fault. And that's why I'm here tonight. And I don't know if I get the chance at all to be able to. I didn't hear if we get a chance to speak afterwards. But I'm saying in advance, if we don't do, yes, I know it's all the Tories' faults, and it looks like that we're the only sensible ones who actually stand up to this leadership. And like we showed in the Hackney today, and I wasn't referring to what you wrote, there's a clear paragraph there that says that the council tax for this year is nothing with your paragraph. It's a nice column there. It says very clear that the council tax of this year is what your budget is. So it would be very interesting to know what I'm even talking here when you've already set it out in your Hackney Love, whatever, maybe next week has a different name. Whatever you set out there will be very interesting to know. Now, I just want to say, you're talking about millions and millions of pounds, which I believe I heard figures of 130 million, which we've had cut over the years. Are you actually trying to tell me that all that 130 million was over the years used responsible? I would love to know how much of that money was wasted, because unfortunately, there's a lot of things that happen, and again, we don't get to look through the whole budget. We can't change the budget, and I will stick up for the Greens, although it's nothing to do with my budget. You were talking about the library cuts. They can't do anything. You already decided it's going to happen this year. It's in the budget. They can't take it out because this is in the budget. You're going to be spending it. Now, the fact is, you talk about climate change, you talk about a whole lot of things which you want to do. The actual fact is, if you start off, and I start off at Hackney Central, you close that road, you put all the traffic onto Emma's Road, and you're doing the game like Wolf. You're the ones who actually cause the traffic, and then you don't know what to do next. So what do? You close the next road. And then you say, we want to do it for the climate. We want to do it for the people. Just don't touch things because you're not capable. It's proven. Go down and have a look on Emma's Road, and you will see that basically that road there is a ghost town. Shops after shops are closing. People are drinking there. This was never before when we had the buses going there. And this is what you do everywhere. If you come in our area in Stamford Hill, when the school streets are working on those hours, or wherever you've dumped the LTN, you have caused chaos and traffic. You are the ones who are making the pollution, and then you want to get rid of it. Don't do pollution and don't get rid of it. If you leave the traffic the way it is, it'll actually move.
Thank you.
The fact is that you're the ones who have done all this damage. It's about time you start spending Hackney's money with a little bit of responsibility, and don't do like a lot of Labour councils who go bankrupt. Okay, thank you very much. I recommend this, and I hope you be reliable and use our method.
Order. Do members wish to debate the amendments? Yes. Okay. Mayor Glanville?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Tory groundhog is firmly here and it's trapped in a barrel. You can hear it being scraped, frankly, Councillor Steinberger. Everything you said and everything in here should be alarm bells for the citizens of Hackney. Whose side are you on? You are not on the side of the people that use Kings Hall Leisure Centre. So not only betraying the citizens of Homerton, but all of those community groups that use that pool to learn to swim, including Haredi school children that use that, but you're condemning them to poorer facilities here. You talk about the private rented sector, so you're going to condemn 35,000 households to damp and mould and not regulating the private rental. I can't imagine why you would be in favour of landlords over tenants. I simply cannot imagine. You also want to cut tree maintenance. You want to cut our partnerships with business around the zero emissions network. You seem to just want to decimate the borough's road infrastructure and its pavements with your amendments. You clearly do not care about the lives of our children. And I finish, Madam Speaker. The biggest waste in this country is from this Tory government. Look at those contracts during COVID. Look at Mayor Johnson's Garden Bridge, the cable car.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Councillor Colburn, please.
I just follow that. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and the Mayor's already alluded to some of what I wanted to sort of respond about. But I mean, these amendments are an absolute betrayal of Hackney's young people and children. I mean, you can look at here. It says, "Do not invest further in school streets." We've already seen the impact of our school streets in Hackney. 74% of tailpipe emissions outside of school gates have seen a reduction in emissions. What are you going to say to the parents and children who attend those schools to remove those school streets? You said that you want to remove CCTV enforcement on our existing schemes. Again, you know, are we suggesting that we're promoting vandalism here? What is it that we're actually pushing for over here? But more importantly, everything that we've proposed in our budget for the Labour budget was overwhelmingly backed by the people of Hackney, because the people of Hackney want action on climate change. They want us to protect the lungs of our children, and they want us to clean our air. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Councillor Nicholson. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are a small band of us, councillor colleagues in this chamber this evening, who have probably over the last 15 to 20 years of service, and I believe Councillor Steinberger is also one of those councillor colleagues, who have had the privilege of kind of reviewing Conservative budgets year after year after year for that length of time. And I did sort of think, actually, there was going to be a moment where this could be a bit different. And it kind of is. I've never before seen a budget where the fine civil servants who actually make this council work for and on behalf of the residents have actually written out warnings in this budget, pointing out that you could walk down a street in Hackney and you could get hit by a tree that's falling over. You could walk into a leisure centre and use it, and the whole place may collapse around you. And we won't do anything on the highways or the pavements or anything of that nature, Madam Speaker. And guess what? You'll end up being hurt.
Thank you.
And then to cap it all, we've got these other things in
Thank
it
you,
about
Councillor Nicholson.
losing CCTV. So not only are we kind of sitting
Councillor
turning Hackney
Nicholson,
into
your
a
1
very
minute is
dangerous
up.
place.
Thank you
Madam
very much.
Speaker.
Thank you,
I really can't sort of expect any support for this budget at all. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholson. Yeah. Councillor, listen, this is your opportunity to speak to them. Oh, sorry, Councillor Billy Lubbock, and then the final speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to say it's really shocking that the Conservative group is bringing this amendment after over a decade of Tory-imposed austerity nationally. Conservative group want to impose even more austerity in Hackney. It's certainly all the Tories' fault, but Labour have also promised austerity light in many general elections. But as the Green Party, it would be remiss of me not to put some air between us and the Conservative group we share these benches with. We want that to be clean air, not toxic air from more cars on our streets. Trying to remove the good environmental elements of this budget is a neglect of the children in the wards you represent, who need fresh air to breathe, trees to enjoy the shade of, and a planet that is not made uninhabitable by climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benny Lubbock. Councillor Lesser, this is your opportunity to speak to amendments. You have no more than 2 minutes. Thank you. Yeah. And then you. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased and proud to seconding the Conservative budget, which speaks to the average residents of Mr. and Mrs. Hackney. After all, we have been elected to be reasonable, responsible of how we spend our money, and for the benefit of the Hackney residents, not to impose on them things which they never asked for and forcing on them unworkable hobby horses. Too many things in Hackney Labour's budget show unreliability and do not align with the current cost of living. As a councillor, this brings me to tears. As well as the London mayor, unfortunately, shows a lack of either responsibility or understanding of public money. Therefore, I recommend to the council the Conservative amendment to the budget. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Councillor Steinberger, do you wish to exercise the right of reply? You have no more than 1 minute. Thank you.
1 minute or 2 minutes?
Oh, sorry, 2 minutes.
Okay, no
Thank
problem.
you.
It's very interesting. I've heard from quite a few councillors from the Labour Party. If we were serious about issues about near the schools and everything, the simple solutions of putting gates near the schools in hours when you don't want to have cars near the schools. Furthermore, you throw figures of 74%. You throw so many figures in the past, and you had now consultation about the 5 school streets, and every single one came back that they didn't want it. You're obviously not bringing those figures which the residents are talking about. You're polluting all the roads around the school. And in your own consultation in Castlewood Road, it says clearly the surrounding roads have now got more pollution. Mountfield Road. If you read your report, you will see that. However, you've put it into your head that this works, and it's obviously not working. This budget is not about closing schools. This is just closing roads and LTNs. It shows in all kinds of different perspectives that you're obviously doing what you want, and then when there's consultations, you choose to take out of the consultation what you want. And we had it last week, where there's an AAP going on, and thousands of residents responded. And yet, sometimes you take out of what a handful of residents wanted, and guess what? They're all Labour hobby horses. You don't take out what thousands of residents said they don't want. You're actually trying to pin the consultation to match your garbage. Now, I'm sorry, this just doesn't work. We've seen on too many things, you are overspending. You are spending things on the money on the wrong things, and this just doesn't work. We are proposing that actually the council tax should be less than last year, and this is the best for nowadays, where residents do not have money for your games. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councillor Steinberger. Thank you. Can we now move to a reported vote on amendments proposed by the Conservatives? As done earlier, there will now be a roll call, and each of your names will be called in alphabetical order. When your name is called, please state how you wish to vote on the proposed amendments. Please simply state for, against, or abstain.
Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Adebayo.
Against.
Councillor Baffle.
Against.
Councillor Benny Lubbock.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Against.
Councillor Chapman,
Against.
Councillor Caban,
Against.
Councillor Conway,
Against.
Councillor Desmond,
Against.
Councillor Etty,
Against.
Councillor Fajana Thomas.
Against.
Madam Speaker,
Against.
Councillor Garbett,
Against.
Mayor Glanville,
Against.
Councillor Hayhurst,
Against.
Councillor Kennedy,
Against.
Councillor Lister, Councillor Maxwell,
Against.
Councillor Moema,
Against.
Deputy Mayor Nicholson,
Against.
Councillor Narcros,
Against.
Councillor Ngundamaran, Councillor Palace,
Against.
Councillor Patrick, Councillor Potter,
Against.
Councillor Race,
Against.
Councillor Rathbone,
Against.
Councillor Sizer,
Against.
Councillor Smith,
Against.
Councillor Steinberger, Councillor Soussairanger, Councillor Troughton, Councillor Turbot Deloff,
Against.
Councillor Walker,
Against.
Councillor Webb,
Against.
Councillor Williams,
Against.
Councillor Woodley,
Against.
Councillor Rout.
Against.
Thank you.
Thank you. The amendments proposed by the Conservative Group have not been carried. We now proceed to the substantive budget proposal. Do members wish to debate the substantive budget? Yes? Okay. So, who would like to speak? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. I stand, as you'd expect, to completely endorse the mayor's budget. It's a budget for stability in our difficult financial circumstances at the moment. A budget which, despite having to put up council tax, helps support our residents through this difficult cost of time with inflation and the cost of living crisis. And it's a budget that supports delivering our manifesto and some huge things that we're adding in there, the support to the public, the private rented sector, the support for co-ops, and the support with cost of living. The area that I really wanted to concentrate on, though, is the level of government funding. And you'll be aware of the decisions, the difficult decisions we've had to face over the years in balancing our budgets. We can all see the effects that austerity has had on our communities, in our health services, in our transport system, and in our broken benefit system. Hackney Council has had its real term funding cut by over 41% since 2010. And of course, this has had a bad effect. There's been a temporary upward blip in social care funding, which, while supported spending in the current year, has effectively been borrowed from future years. The social services funding we get this year doesn't cover the pressures we were facing. And in future, the government promises to fix social care have gone.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Your 1 minute is up.
Okay, a minute. Okay, right. So if I could just say that in closing, and despite these issues, we've put forward a balanced budget that delivers for Hackney, which I commend to council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Anyone else? Oh, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to support what the Mayor said, as I said, local government has lost 60p in every pound. One example of that is the £1.7 billion that has been taken out of the early intervention grant that all councils used to receive, despite the difficult times, the increased need for residents and the difficult decisions that we have to take in this council, working alongside the hard-working officers. Some of the things, as you know, that the Mayor has mentioned is the £1 million support for residents helping with their council tax, the £1.2 million support for households that are struggling, the £200,000 to support residents with fuel costs, and there are so many more. Not least to mention that we made our foster carers exempt. You know, this is the power of Labour in local government, despite the challenges under this government. Just imagine the aspirations with Labour in national government.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Seeking climate justice and tackling the climate crisis runs straight through this budget. A £60 million, £1 million down payment over the next 3 years that's going to help us deliver on Labour's Green New Deal. And as I said earlier, unlike the Tories who deny climate change and the Greens who just talk about the environment, we have a real plan. We're taking action on cleaning our streets and our air to help protect our lungs as children. By action, we're taking on to improve on our school streets and our low traffic neighbourhood schemes. We're helping put money back into our residents' pockets to save on their energy bills through the Community Energy Fund and what we're doing around our Green Homes programme. And we're creating thousands of new jobs across the borough to help grow our green economy and help accelerate green jobs in the borough. We're not just talking the talk, but we're actually walking the walk. And this is what you get when you vote for Labour. You get a real progressive council delivering for the people of Hackney.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Right on time. Councillor Billy Lubbock, who'll be our last speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. The council has placed significant emphasis on green growth and good growth in various documents over the years, including this one. Is the Mayor aware that green growth is an increasingly debunked by academic experts as a term misguided approach based on a term invented by neoliberal Thomas Friedman to facilitate greenwashing and derail genuine reform? Would you agree that to achieve net zero, the council will need to fully transition to a donut, circular and post-growth economic model? It's good to see £14,000 to develop the circular economy strategy. We need to see that strategy and we need to see it delivered. The manifesto the Labour Front Bench have asked me to refer to many times obviously promised the Citizens' Assembly, which didn't materialise, and the biodiversity officer that we also really want to see. So we want to see genuine commitment to the climate emergency, because it is an emergency. And we, like many residents, continue to be concerned around the expansion of the Edmonton incinerator and alarmed by the budget risk of the construction noted in these papers and how will this be mitigated.
Councillor
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yep. Mayor Glanville, do you wish to exercise your right to reply? You have no more than 5 minutes.
Thank goodness one has no longer than 5 minutes. I'm not going to use that, Madam Speaker, but it was, I suppose, Councillor Billy Lubbock's final statement that actually got me to come back to our budget. And there's a danger when presenting something so progressive as cabinet colleagues that you sort of move away and onto opposition territory. But, you know, opposing growth and sustainable growth in a borough like Hackney that depends on growth for its funding would be an absolutely retrograde step for this council and for our communities, and would lead us into the sort of territory that we see in the Tory budget. Because I think about what growth has unlocked. We wouldn't have a £500,000 culture programme without the planning applications that have contributed to the community infrastructure levy that then led to Neighbourhood Sill. We wouldn't have a £14 million investment in our schools programme without the capital receipts that come through Section 106 and the Sill process. We wouldn't be able to do the cross-subsidy investment in projects like Britannia and our housing development programme if we weren't harnessing growth. So I have to be very clear to this chamber, to opposition councillors and to the community. Our circular economy is about green and sustainable growth. We do believe in growth. We believe in more reusing. We believe in diverting more waste. We believe in the businesses that we've been investing in through the Impact and Innovation Fund that are doing some incredible things with the waste stream to create new products, new jobs, and indeed growth, economic growth. And it sort of bridges me back to where Councillor Steinberger was. You know what, he loves Liam Byrne and his letter that he left behind as Chief Secretary, I think, to the Treasury. But what he's failed to mention, and this comes back to growth, is that this Tory and coalition governments have had the lowest growth almost any time in our history, the lowest growth in the G7 this year, and that impacts on the money that we can invest in public services and boroughs like Hackney. So I think what we've seen outlined by Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, Ed Miliband is a plan, a national plan in those 5 missions to deliver truly sustainable green growth, to get behind councils where Labour is in power, like here in Hackney, and make sure that we deliver the investment and that we rebuild our public services, we rebuild our economy around truly social and sustainable principles. This budget does that here in Hackney, but my God, what more we could do if we had a Labour government, as has been outlined. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. We will now proceed to a recording vote on the substantive budget. For clarity, the substantive budget is the budget as proposed by the Mayor. There will now be a roll call and each of your names will be called in alphabetical order. When a name is called, please state how you wish to vote on the proposed amendment. Please simply state for, against, or abstain. And sorry, not proposed amendment, to make clear the substantive budget. Thank you.
Councillor Adams,
For.
Councillor Adebayo,
For.
Councillor Baffour,
For.
Councillor Binny Lubbock,
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor Bramble,
For.
Councillor Chapman,
For.
Councillor Caban,
For.
Councillor Conway,
For.
Councillor Desmond,
For.
Councillor Etty, Councillor Fajana Thomas,
For.
Madam Speaker,
For.
Councillor Garbett,
Abstain.
Mayor Glanville,
For.
Councillor Hayhurst,
For.
Councillor Kennedy,
For.
Councillor Lisser, Councillor Maxwell,
For.
Councillor Moima,
For.
Deputy Mayor Nicholson,
For.
Councillor Narcross,
For.
Councillor Gundamaran,
For.
Councillor Palace,
For.
Councillor Patrick, Councillor Potter,
For.
Councillor Race,
For.
Councillor Rathbone, Councillor Sizer,
For.
Councillor Smith,
For.
Councillor Steinberger. Please, can you turn your mic on? On your mic, thank you.
Just in case you're not sure, against.
Councillor Cicer-Ranger,
I want you to be absolutely sure that I am for.
Councillor Troughton, Councillor Turbot-Deloff,
For.
Councillor Walker,
For.
Councillor Webb,
For.
Councillor Williams,
For.
Councillor Woodley,
For.
Councillor Rout.
For.
Thank you.
Thank you. The budget has been approved. Carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9, amendment to the Mayor's scheme of delegation. Can I ask the Mayor to introduce this report? You have up to 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I just wanted to introduce this item. We talked a lot about democracy and accountability in this chamber. We've also talked a lot about deep admiration and respect for the civil servants and officers that support the council our decision making and delivery. But I think it's absolutely right that we turn a page when taking difficult decisions about how our school system is structured and how it's configured, that we return to the normal ways of doing it that are common in almost every other London borough, where those decisions are taken in public, democratically, by the cabinet members and mayor that the people elect. So I wouldn't normally bring ahead of the AGM changes to my scheme of delegation or to the constitution, but given some of the decisions we're likely to have to take in the months ahead, it is to ensure that those decisions are taken in public by the people's elected representatives, and that is what this delegation update seeks to do around schools configuration and estates. And I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Bramble for her hard work on this, and the governance team for helping with the research and putting together a proposal that does exactly what it says in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Do members wish to debate the report? If so, you will have up to 5 minutes. No. Can members agree?
Madam Speaker, just to quickly say and iterate the support of what the Mayor has said, and one of the reasons when discussing this with Dawn and the Mayor, the reason why I wanted to have the constitutional meeting in a public forum is that we wanted to make sure that the public understood the changes that we make are to ensure that there's greater accountability, coverage and access to what we're doing, and that we're not sitting in the town hall behind closed doors making a difference. And any changes that we do make to the constitution is either to bring more accountability or access to the public to reach us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Moving on, can members agree to note the contents of this report? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 10, draft calendar of council meetings. Members will have seen that this is the draft calendar for noting. It includes religious holidays and meetings have been scheduled to avoid conflict with these. The draft calendar has been circulated to group whips and cabinet prior to this evening for comment, and I propose we note it and move on. Any additional comments or suggestions can be emailed to the governance service. The calendar will be formally approved at the annual meeting on 17 May 2023. Could you please note the draft calendar? Noted. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 11, motion. 4 motions are listed on the agenda. Any motions that have not been debated shall stand referred without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of full council, and they'll be listed in the relevant agenda item in order received. Can I ask all those making speeches and contributing to the debate to be succinct in their comments? In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 16.4, the total time for consideration of motions shall not exceed 30 minutes. The first motion, supporting the transgender community. No amendments have been received in respect of this motion. Councillor Potter and Councillor Garbutt, please raise your hand to indicate you are proposing and seconding the motion. Thank you. Councillor Garbutt, can you confirm whether you wish to speak after Councillor Potter introduces the motion or reserve your right to speak later? Councillor Potter, please introduce your motion. You have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to start by thanking the Mayor for his positive comments earlier, Councillor Williams and Councillor Garbutt for their work in preparing this motion, and to also thank council staff, residents and colleagues who supported the recent vigil in memory of Brianna Gay, a young trans girl who had her future brutally taken away. Here in Hackney, we have much to be proud of, with many residents and organisations working alongside the council to deliver essential services, projects and events to support non-binary people, trans men and trans women. We value the strength that comes with difference and the positive contribution diversity brings to our community. Our aspiration is for Hackney to be a safe, welcoming and inclusive borough for everyone, no matter their gender identity or gender expression. I'd like to give a big shout out to everyone and all groups who make a positive difference to the lives of the transgender community here in Hackney. The council has flown the Progress rainbow flag during LGBTQIA+ History Month since 2019. And this February, we flew the intersex inclusive pride flag for the first time. We have marked the Trans Day of Remembrance since 2021 and undertaken work to ensure the gender neutral title MX is included on data standards. And our equality monitoring forms have included male, female, and prefer to use my own term since 2011. Despite these positive initiatives, trans men, trans women, and non-binary people face many challenges. The UK has seen a significant rise in transphobia, with hate crime quadrupling in the last 5 years. Discriminatory experiences when accessing services are compounded with intersectional factors like their race, religion, disability, socio-economic background, or sexuality. There is much more work to be done to better support transgender and non-binary people to live happy, healthy, and fulfilling lives. And this is the reason why I'm bringing this motion to full council. This motion asks that the council states that trans rights are human rights and affirms the legal rights of all protected groups under the Equality Act 2010. That the council provides training for councillors and council staff to raise awareness, use gestures to make it clear transgender and non-binary people are welcome, and to improve signposting to support services within council comms. That the council considers the particular needs of the trans community who are at high risk of homelessness and work with partner organisations to ensure they are not discriminated against when accessing services. And that the council continues to support and celebrate the work of Proud Hackney, run by and for council staff who identify as LGBTQIA+. This motion also asks that the Mayor acknowledges the International Trans Day of Visibility, that the Health in Hackney Scrutiny Commission, looking to Ben here, Councillor Hayhurst, apologies, the Health in Hackney Scrutiny Commission reviews the barriers faced by trans women, non-binary people and trans men when accessing medical care. And finally, a request to the Chief Executive to ensure all staff are supported in bringing their authentic selves to the workplace. I ask my council colleagues to show solidarity with the trans community and support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garbett. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Potter for that speech. And I'm really positive for this joint motion being put forward by Green and Labour Group. I'm really happy to see it put forward this evening. I as well am really proud of the commitment we've shown in Hackney to trans and non-binary people. The inequalities experienced by trans people are stark. From my work in the NHS on health inequalities, I know that 57% of trans people avoid going to the doctor when unwell, and disabled trans people are more likely than trans people without disabilities to experience delays in healthcare. Unacceptable inequalities caused by a combination of structural causes as well as the stigma. This is an incredibly scary time to be part of a marginalised group, with hate being peddled by the government as well as our media. But in Hackney, we are making a clear statement that we will do all that we can to make Hackney an inclusive, safe space and demand that others do the same. It's essential that our trans and non-binary residents to thrive. They must know that we will not tolerate hate, and that we will do everything we can to create inclusive, safe spaces. It is of vital importance that we are protecting trans youth, making our schools inclusive and ensuring that the right processes for trans youth to be heard and supported. This motion speaks of important gestures that trans and non-binary people, to make them feel welcome, such as using persons' correct pronouns and calling out transphobic comments. These gestures are things that people can be doing every day to make the borough more welcoming and make sure people know that their identity is recognised and valid. We must make sure we are listening to people's experiences and doing all we can to address barriers which continue to stop trans people being able to fully participate in society and to live full, healthy lives. We must be brave in refuting hate and bold in our solidarity, and we must do everything we can to achieve trans liberation. There isn't any debate to be had. Trans rights are human rights. And to echo Councillor Potter, I ask for people's solidarity to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garbett. I will now open this motion to debate. Can I please call on Mayor Glanville? You have up to 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And what powerful speeches from Councillor Potter and Councillor Garbett. And one of my fondest memories of your speakership, Councillor Potter, is when we've been on Pride together and learning more about your own identity and why these issues are so important to you and your family. I think the crucial point is about human rights. We have talked about so many of our communities here in Hackney this evening in the chamber. You know, the Windrush generation, Turkish, Kurdish, Alawi, Syrians, Ukrainians, Christian, Muslim, Orthodox and non-Orthodox Jewish people, and trans and non-binary citizens. The fact that we can all be here in Hackney and live those authentic selves and lives and work for a council like this is what is so powerful. But we also know that hate, prejudice, ignorance is rife around these issues. So having this bold statement, having this motion, a cross-party motion, I think is an incredibly powerful thing that we're doing this evening. And it matters because 1% of Hackney's residents are trans, and we have the highest number of non-binary people in the UK. That is what the census says. So be anchored by the data, be anchored by your values, support this motion this evening, and stand up for some of the most marginal people in society, but also people in our society that don't want to be defined by their marginality. They don't want to be in a position where their rights have to be defended by motions like this. They want to live the same lives that the rest of us do. And this is a small step and a significant step in taking that forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Councillor William, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This motion is a statement of support for the transgender, non-binary, intersex and gender diverse residents, and to establish Hackney Council as an employer that cares about trans, non-binary, intersex and gender diverse staff. Excuse me, I do have a cold. The context is important, Madam Speaker. We're making this statement at a time when they have come under sustained attack. During the same week that Brianna Jai was murdered, publications on both sides of the Atlantic were in a war of words about the transgender community. And I'm not making an inference here that the two are in any way linked. It's just a statement of fact. It's beyond my understanding that it's still acceptable to openly discriminate against the marginalised community. And like other communities before them, it's time that we stood up to publicly declare our support. The public sector equality duty requires this council to promote harmony between those who hold protected characteristics, and gender identity is a protected characteristic. And this is my last point, Madam Speaker. If, like me, you acknowledge that the transgender community deserves to be treated with decency and respect, please support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor William. Councillor Out. Thank you. You have up to 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No doubt, like other council members, since this motion was published, I've been lobbied by some who are concerned it will have a detrimental impact on women's rights. But this is not a legal document. It makes no attempt to undermine laws protecting women or the provision of safe spaces for women. Rather, this is an explicit acknowledgement of the vulnerable situation that both trans men and women find themselves in. It speaks of the need for us to accept differences and protect transgender and non-binary individuals who often face hostility and even, let's face it, violence in their daily lives. Our council is often in the vanguard of social changes, later accepted as mainstream. We must continue to point the way for councils where voters are less progressive on social issues, and to do that with our words, as in this motion, and our deeds. Not everyone will agree, yet, But as it becomes clear that trans human rights
Thank
do not
you.
come at the expense of women's safety, mainstream opinion will change.
Thank
Please
you,
vote for this
Councillor.
motion.
Thank you. Councillor Webb. Councillor Webb, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And before the clock starts, may I just say something? This is Councillor Samatar's statement. I've agreed to say this. She's not able to make the statement, and yet she's there on the screen. And I don't know if it's our rules that we have control over, but if these are our rules, then can we change these rules? Because when Councillor is online and clearly able to participate, they should be
Councillor
able.
Samatar can make a statement, so if Councillor Samatar would like to.
She's got a dodgy connection. Okay, I was told the rules. Sorry, I was told the rules
No,
by the
that's not
rules.
rules. I do have Councillor Samatar down, but then.
Okay,
If
well, then
you
that's better, and I'm perfectly happy now. So with that,
Councillor Webb, please.
with that lead in, I mean, what you do have to imagine is that I am Councillor Samatar because this is her statement. Thank you very much. Can you stop the clock now? Everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. I request this as a Black Muslim woman who hopes the society I work, live and exist in recognises me and the values I hold dear. Madam Speaker, I offer the same courtesy to everyone who has a different identity. I know the pain of experiencing discrimination and hatred for who I am all too well. Strangely, I'm glad I faced such adversity because it has given me a more open mind, heart, and the ability to accept and understand rather than judge or question. But Madam Speaker, as positive as I am, we need to have an uncomfortable conversation and make certain things clear in order to make sure the rights of one doesn't infringe on the rights of others. There is a solution to every hurdle if you make the effort, but that's tomorrow's issue. Today, the trans community needs us to simply state that Hackney is a safe place for them. Just like everyone else, they can live here in peace, reach their full potential and be the true, authentic self. Madam Speaker, Hackney is far from perfect, but I am proud of the way we celebrate diversity as a blend of differences rather than labels that divide us. This motion is asking for a basic declaration. Let us be more welcoming, accepting, safe and equal society. Please vote.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Raffle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This motion could be seen as quite challenging for some people. However, it's when we are tested on the margins of our experience and of our thinking that we grow and that the world is actually changed. And it's in those margins that Labour is most often concerned about those who are suffering discrimination and misunderstanding. And I could give many examples of how we started out being seen as extreme, but now it's, as it were, mainstream. It's the same here. We have the hope that we can be as inclusive as possible in what we do, how we think, how we act, and take forward our political ideas. Much of what is in the actual wording of this motion, rather than the preamble, which we're not voting on, is about what Hackney Council already does concerning transgender and non-binary people and building on that excellent work. Labour-run Hackney Council has a proud and a recognised history of working to achieve equality of opportunity and inclusivity. Long may that continue. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Raffle and Councillor Hayeshurst.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In terms of the health in Hackney aspect, Councillor Potter, yes, we certainly will. Thank you for raising this. We certainly will look at ways that access can be increased and barriers reduced. In looking at this, like recent BMA, British Medical Association research of trans and non-binary respondents, 40% had negative experiences, 21% felt their specific needs had been ignored, and 18% said that they'd avoided treatment for fear of a negative reaction. So clearly with that, with the bedrock of that evidential base and the discrimination in mind, we can certainly go to our NHS colleagues and try and take this forward. But I would just also like to promote the work that other of our NHS colleagues have been doing, because if we look at the last bullet point, it has been slightly amended, I think, because of a technicality, not because of anything in the spirit of it, but it's to ask the Chief Executive to ensure that all staff are supported in bringing their authentic self to work. And what the motion prior to the amendment went on to say is look at what Barts and the Homerton and their staff network have published in this, and they published a very helpful statement that I hope we can adopt the spirit of
Thank
going
you.
forward.
Thank you so much, Councillor Hayes. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak? Councillor Billy Lubbock.
Thank you. As you'll know from my email signature, my pronouns are he, they, and there are some simple things we can do as councillors to make people feel inclusive, like including our pronouns on our email signatures and introducing them in meetings. I, like Councillor Rout, was contacted by residents who had concerns about this motion, and I think it's very important that we say full and heartedly and confidently that trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary identities are valid and exist, and you know, everyone needs our support. And so, yeah, I really commend everyone to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Billy Lubbock. Councillor Potter, do you wish to exercise a right of reply? You have no more than 2 minutes.
I'd just like to thank people for their comments and their support. I think we can be proud
Councillor
of
Potter,
ourselves.
could you
that
please
we
stand
are-
up? Thank you.
Sorry. Stand up. I think we can be proud of all the comments that colleagues have made, you know, that we will work towards making Hackney much more inclusive and a better place for our transgender brothers and sisters and non-binary people to live a much more fulfilling life. So thank you, everybody, for your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. The motion will now be put to the vote. Members are to vote for, against, or abstain. Those in favour?
For.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. I declare that the motion is carried. Moving on to the next motion, solidarity with striking workers. Following publication of the agenda, proposed amendments to the motion were received, and the proposer and seconder of the motion have indicated that they are content to adopt these amendments. Councillor Billy Lubbock and Councillor Garbutt, please could you raise your hands to indicate you are proposing and seconding the motion as set out on the papers as circulated to members this evening, rather than as appearing in the printed agenda papers. Thank you. Councillor Garbutt, can you confirm whether you wish to speak after Councillor Billy Lubbock introduces the motion or reserve your right to speak later?
Speak later.
Speak later. Councillor Billy Lubbock, please introduce your motion. You have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As we all know, unity is strength, and during these difficult economic crises, which have not been caused by the hard-working people of this country or this borough, it is important that workers are given as much support as possible to collectivise, agitate and demand improved pay and conditions. The ordinary people who have had their chances to live extraordinary lives blighted over a decade of counterproductive austerity. Workers in all sectors have kept this country going through major economic, political and health crises, and yet their work is becoming more precarious and undervalued. But frontline workers, service providers, makers, doers and people from all walks of life who keep our economy and decent standards of living afloat are refusing to be pushed around any longer. While we've seen inequality increase, the UK has a very high level of income inequality compared to other developed countries. In 2022, incomes for the poorest 14 million people fell by 7.5%, whilst incomes for the richest fifth saw a 7.8% increase. This doesn't show the increase for the top 1%, whose income growth was even higher. And as we know, the budgets of low-income households are most squeezed by the rising cost of living crisis, with inflation impacting necessities and squeezing already squeezed household budgets. We welcome the engagement of the Labour Group on this motion, and due to time constraints and in recognition of the amends that would likely be voted through in full, we have accepted their amends in full. However, we would like to make a couple of points that instead of maintaining the current union facility time agreements, the Greens will continue to push for facility time to be well supported, extended and enhanced in recognition of increased needs. We also think that writing to the Shadow Secretary of State to implement a vaguely worded plan in the next government is a little presumptive, as we have no idea when the next general election will be or what makeup of the next government will look like. Pardon? You know, we've had general elections come sooner. So anyway, the school strike tomorrow, we're all very aware of, with the National Education Union voting to ballot for the strike. I remember protesting as a small child on the steps of this town hall, and people shouldn't have to strike for decent conditions. It should be a precondition of you know, for living in the 6th largest economy in the world, as measured by the very crude GDP measure. As it stands, it feels more like a kleptocracy, where the government is making laws that makes it easier for businesses to hoover up any spare wealth and resources that would do the world of difference in people's pockets and in the real economy, and not hidden away in offshore bank accounts. Please vote in solidarity for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Benny Lubbock. I will now open this motion up to debate. Mayor Glanville.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Obviously rise to support the motion, and I'm pleased that we've been able to work together on coming up with a text so we can all get behind, hopefully. Again, it's an area where the manifesto is really rich and strong in our support for trade unions. We have passed motions here on fire and rehire. It's right that we're passing one around the right to strike. And I know colleagues from across this chamber have been out supporting Hackney trade unionists when they're on strike and when they're on protests. We're also really pleased to have that recognition of the International Workers' Memorial Day in the motion. We know that all of our rights at work are built on struggle and people having to fight for those rights, and to see a government, you know, bringing in legislation that even Margaret Thatcher didn't bring in, who was no friend of the trade unions and obviously restricted many of their rights, I think is just such a retrograde step. I wholeheartedly support this motion. I wholeheartedly support all of those that have worked on it, and especially to Councillor Williams in her role around trade union liaison. The last thing I would just say is to make sure that in all of our work, especially around public sector workers, we recognise those that are not unionised, the support staff in our hospitals and in our schools that aren't often at the front of our minds when we're supporting what used to be considered white-collar staff. Because if white-collar staff are really struggling in the cost of living crisis, support staff are struggling even more. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Deputy Mayor Bramble, you have up to 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I first joined a trade union when I first became a teacher, just to have that reassurance, knowing that if I needed them, there was someone to help to advocate beside me. And I welcome the NEU inviting myself and Diane Abbott to come and speak with them about the challenges that they are facing in terms of education. But let's be clear, this isn't just a strike about pay. This is about the conditions that they have to work with, and people being concerned about whether it's children or the adults in the hospital that they care for. And this is a government that claps for the NHS and key workers, but then brings in legislation to absolutely undermine their rights to be able to strike. People don't take this decision to strike easily, and it's really important that we continue to stand alongside workers and stand up for people's public right to make a demonstration about what is wrong within society.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Councillor Agundamaran, please, 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Whilst the proposal of this motion is welcomed as amended, we must acknowledge it was Labour that was founded through the trade union movement, not our opposition in this chamber, the Conservative Party and the Green Party respectively. It is us who truly supports trade unions, unlike our opposition in this chamber. It's the Tory party whose government continues to attack the rights of all citizens of this country and trade union members. It's the Green Party who uses the trade union movement for their political means. Hackney Labour councillors are proud to live in a wonderful borough like ours. Why, you may ask? Because it's a Labour mayor and council that welcomed almost 400 staff, over 12 million of contracted services back into the council, make sure quality public services are run for the public good, supports residents into working and earning a living wage, works in partnership with businesses and trade unions in every sector of the local economy to transition towards a green economy, creates new, good quality jobs and making sure the right skills are in place at the right time, and maintains constructive relationships with all local trade unions.
Thank you, Councillor Mayoral. Councillor Adam?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just going to propose to extend the meeting to 15:15.
I second that as well, Madam Speaker.
If we need it, then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Councillor Williams for this motion. Would you like to speak? You have up to 1 minute.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
It's okay.
Apologies.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, we are the party of trade unions, and so we welcome that the Green Party councillors accepted all the amendments that we presented them with, making a Hackney Labour motion, reflecting the work that we're doing locally and nationally, and also recognising the work of Councillor Samawama, the mayoral advisor, whose role they would have deleted under their proposed budget amendments. We have been out on the picket lines with CWU, Unite, Unison, GMB, NEU, RMT. We've been out there with the nurses, ambulance workers. I look forward to going out there with the FBU as well. Last month, the government fast-tracked the new strikes minimum service level bill through Parliament in a matter of weeks, and we urgently need to protect the right to strike. The bill is an anti-strike bill. It's a full frontal attack on democracy, and it's fundamentally wrong. The Institute of Employment Rights, Amnesty International, LSE academics have all criticised the bill for withdrawing protections from individual workers, for giving ministers blunt powers and the Secretary of State the unlimited power to determine service levels. As League member, I want to ensure that as a council, we do all we can to defend workers' rights to strike, so that they're not forced to work once they have voted to go on strike.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Garbett, this is your opportunity to speak to the motion. You have no more than 2 minutes.
Thank you. It's great to hear the solidarity across the chamber this evening for the motion that we've put forward as almost a joint motion with us accepting the amendments. And it really shows solidarity with our workers. The scale of the strikes that we're experiencing are absolutely alarming and cannot be ignored. The Green Party at our last conference passed a motion to support the Enough is Enough campaign and general strike action when it comes. The Green Party is also the only party to call for a total repeal of the Conservatives' anti-union laws. And although this was taken out of the motion, we wanted to make sure that there's support for the Hackney's MPs to be able to attend picket lines. We want to recognise the teachers going on strike tomorrow and all those strikes upcoming, who are not, as it's been said in this chamber this evening, are not just striking for their own pay, but to provide services, care, teaching that they've been trained for and want to provide for the community. So I've heard a lot of support for this motion this evening, and I hope that we're all able to vote in solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garbett. Councillor Binny Lubbock, do you wish to exercise a right to reply? If so, you have up to 2 minutes.
There was just one element I wanted to come back on, and that was the thing the Mayor said around people who are not already unionised. One of the things that the Labour Group did remove from our amendment was that the council could promote trade unionism, renters unionism, and others. And obviously, those people who are not unionised as of yet, it would be great if the council could help support and signpost how they should bring that into into their lives and the value that brings. So that's one element that would have been nice to have seen, and I think it would be nice if we can carry on this conversation so that we can bring that kind of thing back. I know other councils have brought that in, but yeah, thank you very much, and I hope everyone supports this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Binny Lubbock. The motion with accepted amendments will now be put to the vote. Members are to vote for. No, sorry. What clarification? Councillor William, please.
Madam Speaker, Labour councillors, the administration certainly does promote the membership of trade unions. Asking the council to use public funds to do so is not something I'm going to do under my leadership.
you so much, Councillor Williams. The motion with accepted amendments will now be put to the vote. Members are to vote for, against, or abstain. Those in favour? Okay. I declare the motion with accepted amendments is carried. Thank you very much. We have now reached the end of the 30 minutes allocated to motions. As previously advised, any four motions not debated shall stand referred without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of full council for discussion. Motions will be listed at the relevant agenda item in order received. We have come to the end of the agenda and I declare this meeting closed. Thank you, everyone.
Please be upstanding for the Speaker of Hackney.